Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. After Rutger left the Great Pyramid, he returned to the ship. There were 2 stewards following him this time. The stewards of the caravan were all promoted by Rutger, and they still had some brains. After all, everyone was born as slaves before, so it would be nice if they were a little clever. Rutger didn't expect all of his men to be geniuses. Dono, Marty, you will stay in Meereen to assist His Majesty, but be sure not to expose His Majesty's identity. Rutger then went on to talk about a lot of things to note, including opening a hot pot restaurant and barbecue restaurant and contracting salt land. The 2 of them listened attentively and repeatedly confirmed some key details. This scene fell into Rutger's eyes and made him very satisfied. However, after Rutger left, Dono and Marty looked at each other and then couldn't help laughing. Great, I didn't expect us to stay in Meereen permanently, haha. Marty was also very happy. Not only can I stay in Meereen permanently, but I can also work beside the captain. I just asked the 7 gods to be useful. Fuck you. I told you that only those in Westeros believe in the 7 gods. They are false gods. Fake. Dono said. No. Dono. What do you mean? Are you looking for trouble? Aha, go to the tavern. Whoever falls down first will treat you to a woman. When the 2 were slaves, they served the slave master together. Later, the slave owner was happy and gave each of them a glass of wine. From then on, the 2 became addicted to wine. Later, he was bought back by Rutger because he seemed to be smarter, and within a few months he was promoted to manager. So the 2 of them went drinking as soon as they were paid after becoming stewards. Wine is something that affects people. Some people like to drink high-alcohol wine, and some people like to drink low-alcohol wine. The 2 of them were addicted to alcohol with high alcohol content, and they often pooled their money to buy good drinks. Night. At this time, the dock had been taken over by the Unsullied, and a large number of high-level slaves were driven to the dock, including a group of Raza people in the middle of the night. This group of high-level slaves came to the dock, cursing. Although they were not interested in Daenerys liberating the slaves, they all liberated the slaves, but they were driven and sold like slaves. However, they only dared to mix in the crowd and take advantage of the chaos. After all, the Unsullied around them didn't look like they were joking. Jack was not far away watching these high-level slaves boarding the ship in an orderly manner. With this group of high-level slaves, the development of Atlantis will speed up. As for whether these people were willing or not, Jack didn't care. And Jack believes that as long as this group of people have houses, jobs, and even families in the Seychelles Islands, they will no longer think about leaving the Seychelles Islands. What's more, the house is not free. It comes with a mortgage. Even for these future elites, it is not easy to repay the mortgage. The house was purchased voluntarily. It didn't matter if you didn't buy it, but there were wild animals on the island. Without a house, you had to live in the open air. Thinking of this, Jack laughed unconsciously. When it comes to tying people up, Jack is very experienced. At midnight, about 11 o'clock in the morning, 5,000 high-level slaves. No, we should say social elites embarked on a journey to the Seychelles Islands. A few dozen of them protested and even wanted to resist violently, but Jack ordered them to be executed on the spot. Freedom was the slogan shouted by Daenerys, but it didn't work for Jack. If you don't want to go, it's okay. Then just go and die. These 5,000 high-level slaves account for 80% of the number of high-level slaves in Meereen. Although every high-level slave is valuable, a disobedient high-level slave is worthless. Therefore, Jack did not hesitate to kill. If he tried to negotiate with Jack based on his own value, ordinary people would really not be qualified, and the same would be true for high-level slaves. After all the loaded ships left, another wave of empty ships came. This wave of ships was small in number, but it also brought in 5,000 people. Soon 5,000 Raza people were brought to the dock. They were quiet but looked around nervously. These 5,000 selected Lazar people originally thought that they would become slaves and be sold again. But the leader told them, "You are a very lucky group of people, and will go to a sacred island, which is said to be the center of the world." This made them nervous and scared, but also somewhat hopeful. Although being in Meereen is not bad now, with food to eat and coins to collect every day, a place that can be called the center of the world must be better. The hearts of the Lazar people are full of expectations. They will go to the center of the world, where there will be no suffering and no centaurs. There was endless white bread and fresh milk. Well, that's what the leader told them anyway. A perfect world. Anyway, the pie that Jack drew aroused the appetite of this group of Raza people and made them think more about their future lives. Of course, the main reason is that they know that they have no right to refuse. After all 5,000 people boarded the ship, Jack left with satisfaction. The development of Atlantis is finally on the right track. And in 3 more months, the merchant ship sent to Bravos will be transformed, and then it will be considered a real naval force. The most important thing is that once the renovation of these ships is completed, Jack will be able to return to his old profession and work in coastal areas and high seas. There is still a big gap between professional warships and merchant ships. It was the next morning. Everything was the same in Meereen. The freemen began to work. The conservative nobles hid in the pyramids to plot evil plans. The newly appointed administrators began to place their own people in the administrative district. Everything was the same as before, and no one noticed that Meereen had lost 10,000 people. Those who knew kept silent. After all, this matter was human smuggling to a certain extent. Dany used these people to exchange for Jack's position as prime minister. Dany did not regret this, and Jack was also very satisfied with the deal. 2 months later, the outskirts of the Septas. The speed of the fleet was greatly reduced under full load, but fortunately they sailed with the wind most of the time, so they could return to the Septas within 2 months. Many people were taking a breath on the deck, and the air in the cabin was too disgusting. They would rather huddle together on the deck than go back to the cabin to suffer. When they were high-level slaves before, they had never suffered such suffering. In contrast, the Laza people on the other side were more adapted to this kind of cabin life, which was no different from their original living environment. Even with the management of the guards, at least there was no urination and defecation everywhere. Many people also came to the deck and looked at the Septas shells in the distance. The area of the Septas is very large. The central island alone is 20,000 square kilometers. Counting the surrounding small islands, the total area can be 24,000 square kilometers. It is 1/10 of the Blue Star Empire. The territory of the British Empire is about 245,000 square kilometers. Are we going to live on this island in the future? This looks like another cage. A female Laza asked the man next to her. The man nodded, and then joked, "Maybe there are a lot of gold mines on it, and we were sold as slaves by Her Majesty the Queen again." The female Laza rolled her eyes. "Your brain is stupider than those noble lords' sons. If it was really mining, there wouldn't be so many women." The female Laza's name is Ashley. She is very smart and has guessed the approximate result of this migration. The desolate-looking island, 4,000 women and 1,000 men, all young people. This almost clearly told her that they were the first population to open up the land. Thinking that she would become a reproductive tool after being sent to the island, Ashley couldn't help frowning. Taming had just gained freedom. She was also an apprentice in a tailor shop and learned how to sew clothes. Everything was obviously moving in a good direction. But overnight, she fell into a life no different from slaves. The saddest thing is that they don't even have the slightest room to resist. The Unsullied who escorted them on board were Daenerys's people. In other words, this human smuggling was allowed by the Queen. Ashley, why are you so sad? We are about to reach the center of the world. Aren't you curious? The speaker was a 19-year-old male Laza, named Mark. Ashley rolled her eyes at him. Do you really believe what they say? What is the center of the world? If it is true, why haven't you heard of it before? Mark picked his nose and then said firmly, It's impossible. Your Majesty will not lie to us. Her Majesty the Queen gives us food and freedom and will not sell us to mine. Of course it's not mining. It's land reclamation similar to mining. Your Majesty doesn't know how to govern the country at all and doesn't understand politics. After Meereen lost its economic source, it must be the Prime Minister who is secretly smuggling slaves. Ashley speculated. It was Her Majesty the Queen who liberated you, and the Prime Minister would not do such a thing. I believe that the Prime Minister is an upright person. As soon as Mark finished speaking, a dull dragon roar sounded, and a red dragon with a wingspan of nearly 3 meters passed overhead. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the dragon of Prime Minister Jack Poseidon. Take a look. Ashley looked at Mark, thinking what else you have to say. However, what Ashley never expected was that Mark was looking at the direction where the dragon flew away with an excited look on his face. Muttering to himself, "It's the Prime Minister's dragon, it's Korakshu, the Prime Minister's dragon." Then he looked at Ashley excitedly. "It's the Prime Minister's dragon, this must be the center of the world. The Prime Minister will never lie to us, our good days are coming." Ashley looked at Mark with an excited face, and didn't know what to say. I don't know if it was her illusion. She saw a trace of morbid worship on Mark's face. It's like a fanatic who has gone astray. But what Ashley didn't know was that Mark was one of the first slaves that Jack had personally liberated. He was also the young slave who was ready to rise up and rebel before Jack and Grey Worm arrived. Since then, he has become Jack's fanatic. As long as Jack promised, he firmly believed that Jack would fulfill it. What a fool, Ashley complained helplessly. You don't believe it? Then let's make a bet. Let's bet on whether our lives will be better than in Meereen after we get to the island. How about it? Ashley sneered at the words. Okay, what do you want to bet on? How good can the living environment on an island be? Not to mention that it is an undeveloped island. But Mark was indeed confident. If life on the island is not as good as in Meereen, then even if you win, I will do whatever you tell me to do. But if life on the island is better than in Meereen, you must marry me and give me a litter of boys. Ashley blushed and said shyly, I'm not a pig. How can I give you a litter? Mark smiled and said, then give me 10. 10 of it is 10. I don't believe I will lose. Ashley went all out. It's just 10 children, at most 1 a year. 10 years will be enough. Mark laughed. Ashley was smart and not ugly. She was the secret crush of many male slaves. Many people wanted Ashley to give birth to their children, but they didn't expect that they would be the first to do so. Mark couldn't suppress his smile at all. In his opinion, he would never lose. The Prime Minister said it was the center of the world, so it must be the center of the world. Ashley's face was flushed. Looking at Mark, who was grinning, she cursed him silently. She also had a good impression of Mark, otherwise she would not agree to the request of having a child. After all, it was no different from a marriage proposal. When he was a slave before, Mark was always out of tune with the surrounding environment. He seemed to have never been sad about losing his freedom. He was cheerful, sunny, and energetic every day. Not only Mark and Ashley were speculating about life on the island, but the rest of the Raza people were also speculating. But like Ashley, most people still maintained a pessimistic view. By the evening, when only a ray of red glow was left in the sky, the fleet finally arrived at the dock of Setzel Central Island. Today, Setzel Central Island is called Neptune Island. A simple and clear name. As it was about to get dark, the guards on the ship almost drove everyone off the ship in the shortest time. When she stepped onto the dock, Ashley realized that she had already lost half the battle. The wide and flat dock and the hard road paved with unknown materials under her feet, everything showed the extraordinariness of the island. Soon a large number of Unsullied rushed over, and after controlling the situation, an old man came up. Newgate took the iron trumpet handed over by his men, coughed twice and said, From today on, you are citizens of Atlantis. In the next period of time, line up to receive supplies, and someone will lead you to the camp. After that, Newgate didn't care about the reaction of this group of people and directly asked the Unsullied to take 10,000 people to receive supplies first. Since all the resources on the Sea King Island were tilted to the construction of the dock in the early stage, these 10,000 people will have to live in tents for the time being. When everyone learned that they didn't have a place to live, they were immediately disappointed. Without even a place to live, it's not as good as the life in Meereen. When they thought that they were caught here by deception and threats, everyone felt very uncomfortable, especially the 5,000 high-level slaves. Some of them are housekeepers, some are teachers and doctors, and the worst are also high-level bed slaves. So no matter which city-state in Essos, they can live comfortably. But in the blink of an eye, they were sent to a deserted island where no one lives. How could they not feel uncomfortable? Fortunately, when it was time to eat, they felt better because the food here looked very good. Everyone was given a piece of softer bread, as well as vegetable soup and pork sausage. Many people wondered if this was the last meal before execution, and whether they were going to be sent to sacrifice to some evil god. It turned out that they thought too much. Nothing special happened until they finished eating. There were only the Unsullied who kept patrolling, and the caravan crew, who told about the situation on the island. With the crew's explanation, this group of people gradually understood their situation. The stupid people thought it was okay. Although they needed to open up the land, they were not afraid of hardship as they were slaves before. And according to them, after the huge royal city was built, they would also be allocated their own houses. On the other side, Newgate also sorted out the information of this group of people. There were 2,000 craftsmen of various types, 1,000 male and female bed slaves, 600 housekeepers, 500 doctors, 500 technical slaves of various types, and 400 teachers. Finally, there are 5,000 Lazars. In addition to nearly 7,000 Unsullied, 1,000 sea guards, and 500 merchants' crew. There are about 18,500 people on the entire Sea King Island, including a large number of senior talents. Newgate smiled from ear to ear. He had persuaded Jack not to go to Meereen to be the Prime Minister before. It would be great to be the Emperor on Sea King Island. But now, watching the high-level slaves worth hundreds of thousands of gold dragons being sent back without spending a penny, he suddenly felt that it was not impossible for Jack to stay in Meereen for a while. Newgate is now really immersed in the role of Prime Minister, working hard for the development of Atlantis every day. As the first old man to follow Jack on Sea King Island, when Jack is not there, he is the first person to speak. Now that he has someone in his hand, he is going to make a plan overnight. Among the craftsmen are stonemasons, carpenters, and blacksmiths. I bought iron ore before, and now I can refine axes and other tools by myself. With more people, we can cut down a lot of trees and develop towards the center of the island. Wood can also be used to make many things. With carpenters, the role and demand of wood will be greatly increased. When the forest is reduced, various stones can be handed over to stonemasons, and then the task of burning cement and bricks will be handed over to stonemasons. When he thought of the rapid development in the future, Newgate was very happy, and he was so excited that he couldn't breathe. He quickly suppressed his mood, drank a sip of water, and sighed that he was old after all. Back then, he didn't even have this breathless situation when he moved goods for a day at the dock. At this time, Rutger found Newgate and handed him a letter. "This is what His Majesty asked me to give you." He said this is the first pot of gold in Atlantis. Newgate solemnly took the envelope. The current Atlantis finances rely entirely on the selfless dedication of good people. When Atlantis first landed in the Septas, it was the richest time. At that time it had a full 5 million gold dragons, by looting and confiscating the property in Astapor. Now there are only 4.2 million gold dragons left in the warehouse of Atlantis. It cost 800,000 gold dragons just to buy food and iron ore. Bravos still has 100,000 gold dragons for warship transformation. After Bravos has transformed the merchant ship, these 100,000 gold dragons will be gone, and then they will have to order another 95 longships. Only by combining the transformed large warships and longships can it be considered a complete and regular navy. All of this is spending money. The remaining 4.2 million gold dragons seem to be a lot, but they can't support the rapid development of Atlantis in the future. With the increasing population, wages and food are a huge expense. Originally, Newgate planned to wait until the warship transformation was completed, and then go back to his old business and continue to be a pirate. This matter was also allowed by Jack. In Jack's opinion, looting can not only earn money to feed itself, but also play a good role in training troops. Rutger saw Newgate put away the envelope, and was about to leave. "Rutger, I'll trouble you next. Buy as much food and iron ore as possible. As for limestone, I will try to speed up the progress of logging. There should be limestone on the mountains on the island." Lord Newgate, as for limestone, His Majesty the Sea King has already thought of a way. He can just send 12 giant ships other than the Sea King to Slave Bay for transportation. Newgate nodded when he heard this. This method can indeed survive the early stage. "Okay, let's do it this way. I will speed up the logging work on the island. When the rainforest area is reduced, limestone will no longer rely solely on the outside world." Rutger smiled awkwardly. In fact, there is no shortage of limestone. It is everywhere. But he subconsciously regarded limestone mines as iron mines and asked around about the whereabouts of limestone mines. Otherwise, several batches of limestone would have been shipped back long ago. Newgate did not notice Rutger's embarrassment. After chatting with Rutger for a few more words, he let Rutger leave. After Rutger left, Newgate took out Jack's envelope and opened it only after confirming that the seal had not been opened. After opening the letter, a line of large characters came into view. Soap and refined salt manufacturing process. This is the money-making process that Jack is going to take out first. Among them, refined salt is more convenient to make, because it is close to the sea, and you can directly use seawater to dry and get coarse salt. Then precipitate, filter, evaporate, and purify multiple times. And finally add plant ash water and continue to filter and purify. Then fry the purified matter to dry, and you can get refined salt. In fact, this is not refined salt. At most it can only be considered fine salt. But it can still crush the salt on the market today. And Jack doesn't have to worry about being sentenced to the crime of killing 9 clans. The profit of salt trade in the Game of Thrones is not high. The right of selling salt is not exclusive to the royal family. Nobles and merchants can sell salt. In the original book, when Daenerys negotiated with other city-states, she mentioned that Meereen could export salt, copper, cascari wine, olives, and olive oil. But later, the nobles thought that salt, copper, and wine were not profitable. The biggest reason was that coarse salt and wine could be produced by all city-states, not to mention copper. However, the fine salt made according to Jack's method must be profitable. No matter where it is, the fineness of the salt determines the price of salt. As for soap, it is more special. Soap not only needs plant ash water, but also animal fat. The best raw materials are fish oil, sheep oil, and lard. Fish oil can be obtained from marine fish, but the fat of fish is too low, and the efficiency of obtaining is not high. The best way to obtain fat is lard and sheep oil, which is efficient to obtain. More importantly, lard and sheep oil can be bought directly. In Meereen, nobles and slave traders will purchase a large number of cattle and sheep raised by the Raza people. They will eat the fattest parts, and the remaining meat and fat will be sold to free people. As for the lowly slaves, they are only fit to pick up the bones and swill they throw away. But the pig and sheep fat need to be considered in the long run, which also involves Jack's economic deployment. After carefully reading the envelope in his hand, the various matters are explained clearly in it, and Newgate only needs to do it according to what is said above. With a large number of senior butler slaves, many things no longer need Newgate to do personally, and the butler slaves are enough to replace grassroots officials. In addition, the Sea King Island is not open to the outside world now, and the only way to contact the outside world is the giant wave chamber of commerce. So it is more convenient to keep secrets, and Newgate can boldly employ these newcomers. Thinking of this, Newgate turned out a very thick book called My World. It records in detail how to control thoughts and how to keep key technologies confidential. He has to study it carefully, and there must be no mistakes in the tasks assigned to him by His Majesty. This My World is a book written by Jack in his spare time based on his historical experience in his previous life. He was afraid that he would forget some valuable historical experience over time. The content of this book includes astronomy, geography, mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, politics, economics, etc. In Jack's eyes, it is like an incomplete encyclopedia. But in Newgate's eyes, it is a Bible and a divine book. If it falls into the hands of any ruler, it is enough to build a huge empire. Which is Westeros continent. The situation in the Seven Kingdoms is very chaotic now. Since the death of Eddard Stark, there have been rumors about the truth of Robert's will and Joffrey Baratheon's life experience. The final result is that the Stark family in the north declared independence, and Robb Stark, the eldest son of the Stark family, became the king of the north. He led his army south and vowed to avenge his father. And Robert Baratheon's 2 younger brothers also declared that Joffrey was a bastard and was not qualified to inherit the throne. So the second son of the Baratheon family, Stannis Baratheon, became king on Dragonstone Island, and wanted to compete for the throne. Renly Baratheon, the third son of the Baratheon family, became the king of the Stormlands and received support from all the families in the Stormlands. At the same time, Renly also married the family of the Reach. For a time he had an army of 100,000 and became the most powerful contender for the Iron Throne. In addition to the above 3 kings, there is Joffrey Baratheon, who now occupies the Iron Throne. However, Joffrey is actually the son of Cersei, and his younger brother Jaime, and has the blood of the Lion family Lannister. At the same time, Joffrey is also the nominal king of the Seven Kingdoms, but the throne has not yet been firmly established. The last one to be king was the Greyjoy family of the Iron Islands, and the king was Balon Greyjoy. People jokingly called him King Balon. The reason was that he had rebelled once more than a decade ago. At that time, Balon, who proclaimed himself king, felt that his family's Iron Fleet was invincible. The Iron Islands have no land connected to the Seven Kingdoms, and the Iron Throne cannot do anything to him. As a result, he was severely beaten by Robert in the north, and his sons died in battle, one after another. In the end, only one son was left, and he was adopted by Eddard Stark. However, Balon also has a daughter, Yara Greyjoy, who is no less handsome than his son. Their family emblem is a golden sea monster, so they are also called the Sea Monster family. In just 1 year, 5 kings appeared in Westeros, except for the King of the North and the King of the Iron Islands. The remaining 3 kings claimed that they were the Orthodox of the Iron Throne. The result was unexpected that Renly Baratheon, who had the most troops and supplies, became the first king to die. It is said that Renly Baratheon died of strange magic, but more people still believe that Renly was assassinated by people, not strange magic. However, no matter what the rumors are, it cannot change the fact that Renly Baratheon died and Stannis Baratheon obtained the loyalty of the Stormland vassal. The War of the 5 Kings became the War of the 4 Kings before the chaos officially began. The Greyjoys were not strong enough on land and did not have the strength to fight in depth. Therefore, there were only 3 real protagonists in the War of the 5 Kings. They were the Northern Army led by Robb Stark, who had sparse equipment and even farmers holding dung forks, totaling about 20,000 people. The entire North has a population of only 800,000, and with some hidden populations, it is about 1 million. The 2% enlistment rate has caused considerable problems in the North's grain harvest. So the North must complete its strategic goals as soon as possible, and then go home to harvest grain. The second is the Westerly Army that supports the Iron Throne. The gold mines in the Westerly are extremely rich, so the weapons and equipment of the Westerly Army are very sophisticated, and there is no shortage of food and grass. And the leader of the Lannister family in the Westerly, Tywin Lannister, is a very outstanding ruler. So the Westerly Army is different from the conscripts in other places. They have received orthodox training at Tywin's request, and have very strong combat effectiveness. Finally, there is Stannis Baratheon, who has now received the support of the Stormlands. The Stormlands were originally the territory of the Baratheon family. It is not rich, but it is not that bad. So Stannis Baratheon also has an army of 24,000 people and a navy of 4,000 pirates, with a total of 28,000 people on land and sea. And Stannis has another advantage, that is, his superb combat command ability. His military talent is definitely one of the best in Westeros. It's a pity that he later met the little devil Tyrion Lannister. In the Battle of Blackwater, the confident Stannis was defeated by the dwarf Tyrion, and finally could only go north with thousands of remnants. It is not known whether it is a coincidence or a necessity. The 2 major gathering places of human civilization in the world are simultaneously caught in a huge vortex of war. Not long after the Seven Kingdoms War in Westeros began, the war in Essos entered the preparation stage. Yunkai united with Mugis, Atlantis and several weak free trade cities to form an anti-Dragon King alliance, and assembled an army of 300,000 slaves. The news soon spread to Meereen, and Daenerys immediately convened a round-table meeting, and all the new power classes in Meereen were present. In the main hall of the True Dragon Pyramid, in addition to the large round table in the middle, rectangular tables were set up on both sides. This was Daenerys' own idea. The Dragon Mother did not have long-term political wisdom, but she still had a lot of cleverness in some things. For example, the long table meeting was set up because Daenerys was afraid that Meereen would become Jack's one-man show, so she did this thing. Dany divided the True Dragon Pyramid into 3 power ladders. The first ladder was Dany herself, sitting on the throne at the top. The second step is the Round Table meeting, which is the leadership of Meereen in the royal meeting after decentralization. The third step is the people at the square table, officials and representatives of Meereen at all levels, and religious forces such as the Green Saint, who belong to the executive class and have no decision-making power. Now Yunkai has united many forces to form an anti-Dragon King alliance. Do you have any countermeasures? Dany asked everyone. The establishment of the Anti-Dragon King alliance was within her expectations, but she did not expect Yunkai to win over so many allies in a short time. Volantis, Nuges, Tauros, and even the camel soldiers of Karth. Especially the sea fleet of 300 warships of Volantis, which is definitely not good news for Dany. Once the fleet of Volantis arrives, Meereen's maritime trade will be directly blocked. Everyone in the hall was silent. There was no good way now. They could only fight back and block the water. Moreover, the arrangements made by the Prime Minister before were already very comprehensive, and they had no other way. So many people looked at Jack silently. After all, it was not a good thing for a minister to keep silent. Seeing this, Jack said directly, "Your Majesty, it is not us who should be anxious, but the Slave Owner Alliance. The name of their alliance is the Anti-Dragon King Alliance, because of the 4 dragons in your and my hands. They are afraid that the dragons will grow up, so they want to use the word Dragon King to awaken people's fear and let everyone unite to deal with us. And the Cather Pass is under our control. The Raza people are willing to sell us food at 80% of the market price, as long as we provide them with shelter. There are food and people, and we are also purchasing iron ore on the market. Now there are 30% more iron ore merchants coming to Meereen than before. With iron ore, we can make weapons and then arm the Freeman Corps." After hearing Jack's words, not only Daenerys was relieved, but even the rest of the people present had a bottom line in their hearts. Many times Jack is like a reassurance to Meereen, as if as long as Jack speaks, there will be no problem. Mondo said at this time, "Prime Minister, do you mean that as long as we can delay time, we can win this war?" Everyone was looking forward to Jack's answer, but Jack's next words poured cold water on everyone. "The first 2 years are good for us. We need to train soldiers and stabilize the operation of Meereen. But after a long time, if we can't defeat this coalition after the financial bottom, we will collapse first without the slave owners sending troops." Jack looked at everyone. This is the problem in front of us. The Anti-Dragon King Alliance has just been established. It will take at least half a year to gather together to send troops. In this half year, we must take down Yunkai and Estepor. Otherwise, when the Alliance army forms an encirclement, we will really be trapped in an isolated city. Dany sat on the throne with a frown. It is not difficult to understand what Jack meant. Before the Anti-Dragon King Alliance gathers to encircle Meereen, Yunkai and Astapor must be taken down first. Otherwise, we will face the double teaming of the Anti-Dragon King Alliance's navy and army. But if we take Yunkai and Astapor first, we don't have to worry about the army, and we can just focus on resisting the Navy's beach landing. But the problem is, how can we ensure that we can gain a foothold in Yunkai and Astapor? Excuse me, Prime Minister, the army of Meereen only has 9,600 unsullied, and 2,000 of them have to be allocated to protect the Raza people. How can we consolidate the rule of the 3 cities in Slaver's Bay? The Freemen's Legion. The Freemen's Legion? Dany asked back. In Dany's view, the Freemen's Legion is just a decoration, at least for the next 6 months. It is composed of a group of ordinary slaves and has no decent weapons and armor. Compared with the Unsullied, such a legion is indeed like a decoration. Yes, it is the Freemen. Not counting the Unsullied who are protecting the Lhasa, you still have 7,600 people. 3,200 Unsullied, and the Black Dragon Legion are stationed in Meereen. 2,400 Unsullied and the White Dragon Legion are stationed in Yunkai, and the remaining Unsullied and the Green Dragon Legion are stationed in Astapor. Excuse me, I don't think dividing the troops is a good choice. The slave owners are very likely to take this opportunity to encircle and suppress the Unsullied in Yunkai and Astapor. Barristan is not optimistic about the decision to divide the troops. In his opinion, the most powerful thing about the Unsullied is the military formation, and the more they are, the stronger they are. Once the troops are divided, no city-state can resist the coalition of slave owners. Seeing that Dany was still in deep thought, Barristan continued, "Your Majesty, the 3 Freemen legions have a total of 18,000 people, and each legion has only 6,000 people after separation. Even if the Unsullied are included, there are less than 10,000 people, and this does not include the casualties in the attack on Yunkai and Astapor, and the slave owner coalition has a total of 300,000 people. Sir Barristan, I think you have overlooked a problem. After we occupied Yunkai and Astapor, can't we recruit more soldiers? Besides, we haven't looted the wise lords of Yunkai. There must be a huge amount of wealth in their pyramids. Barristan frowned and said, "Prime Minister, believe me, you have not participated in the war, so you may not know. Newly recruited soldiers are very easy to collapse, and cannot be compared with normal soldiers. Not all soldiers are like the Unsullied Legion." After speaking, Barristan also glanced at Grey Worm, hoping that Grey Worm could persuade Daenerys not to disperse his forces with him. However, Grey Worm pretended not to see it. He did not want to, nor did he have the ability to participate in the decision-making. He just had to obey the orders of Her Majesty the Queen. Seeing that Grey Worm had no intention of speaking, Barristan could only pray that Daenerys would listen to his advice. At this time, Daenerys was also in a dilemma. She thought Jack's idea was good, but she also felt that Barristan was right. Seeing this, Jack said directly to Daenerys, "Your Majesty, although our soldiers are all slaves, the soldiers of the Anti-Dragon King Alliance are also slaves. Even if there is some difference, it will not be too big." Hearing Jack's words, Daenerys' eyes lit up. Yes, the soldiers of the Anti-Dragon King Alliance are also slaves. Even if they are strong, they are not much stronger. And she is still the defender, which to a certain extent smooths the gap in the quality of individual soldiers. In this case, let's do it according to the Prime Minister's words. When does the Prime Minister think we should attack Yunkai and Astapor? Barristan looked at Jack helplessly and angrily. Although Meereen quickly stabilized under Jack's policy, in Barristan's eyes, Jack is just a political expert who doesn't understand military operations at all. Little did he know that in Jack's eyes, let alone Barristan, an old man who has always served as the King's Guard, the wars in the entire Game of Thrones world are like gang fights. In Jack's impression, the Game of Thrones belongs to the Western Middle Ages. There are no fancy strategies in the battle between the two armies. They just set up their formations and fight hard. The only one who used tactics was the young wolf of the Wolf family in the north. Robb Stark used different tactics in the process of fighting in the south, and defeated Tywin Lannister in the early stage. It's a pity that Robb has strong military ability, but his political mind is like his father. After Robb killed Ker Stark and married the little nurse, Robb no longer had hope of winning. Jack ignored Barristan's glare. Jack was never afraid of the struggle for party interests. Now Daenerys' subordinates have been clearly divided into three factions. The most powerful is the bureaucratic group led by Jack now, and the administrative power of the entire Meereen is in their hands. The second is Barristan and Jorah of the Westeros faction. According to Daenerys' appointment, Barristan served as the captain of the Royal Guard, and at the same time led the Meereen garrison and was responsible for the security of Meereen. Jorah led the 3 Freeman legions and served as the general commander of 18,000 people. Dany never let Jack touch the military power of Meereen, and Jack knew this. Although Dany could let Jack manipulate her at night, she was not ambiguous on fundamental issues. She would not let anyone shake the foundation of her rule. I think the best time to take action is 3 months later. 3 months later, let the Freeman Legion see blood directly, and there will be enough time to attack Yunkai and Astapor. Jack is going to attack the other 2 cities in Slaver's Bay in 3 months. By then, the Freeman Legion will have been trained for several months and can see blood. An army that sees blood and an army that does not see blood are completely 2 different concepts. During this period, you can also collect wood to build siege equipment. After all, it is unrealistic to take Yunkai from the back door. In the end, you still have to rely on siege equipment. It is now May of 31 AC. After discussing with the ministers, Dany decided to send troops to Yunkai on August 10 and destroy the slave-owning regimes of Yunkai and Astapor within a month. Daenerys' 3 dragons have also become powerful enough to surprise the enemy during sieges. Of the 4 remaining dragons in the world, Drogon is the largest, with a wingspan of 3 meters. It is estimated that he can be ridden when he grows to 5 meters in another year. The second is Carx, which now has a wingspan of 2.7 meters, smaller than Drogon, but because of his slender body, Carx looks a whole circle smaller than Drogon. The smallest are Viserion and Rhaegal. Viserion has a wingspan of 2.2 meters and Rhaegal has a wingspan of 2.1 meters. There is basically no difference from the outside. Meereen began to prepare for war. 1 month later.
June 301 AC, morning.
Because at Jack's request, Meereen had a new Dragon King code, so Dany did not have to personally judge the miscellaneous trivial matters, and the whole hall looked very empty and quiet. Originally, Dany did not establish a new code after occupying Meereen, which led to constant conflicts among the free people of Meereen, and the three dragons of Drogon went out hunting by themselves. So Dany in the original play often had to judge disputes and trivial matters in the Pyramid Hall, and her life was quite fulfilling every day. But now most of the government affairs are handed over to the Prime Minister and the Council of Administrators, and she only feels fulfilled when she is with Jack at night every day. What greets her during the day is sitting bored in the Pyramid Hall. Even the happiest time is when someone comes to report on their work, because only at this time can she feel her role. Just when Dany was bored, Barristan came up with a man. The man held by Barristan was a former free man of Meereen, who looked to be 30 years old. Barristan threw the package in his hand to the ground, and the package scattered, revealing the golden mask and dagger inside. Dany's expression instantly changed from doubt to solemnity, and she had guessed something. "Sons of the Harpy?" Dany asked uncertainly. Barristan nodded heavily. His strange whereabouts were discovered by his neighbors. In order to avoid being implicated and losing the Golden Dragon reward, his neighbors reported him. After receiving the report, I immediately led people into his house. He was hiding the mask and dagger at the time. Barristan now manages 3,000 garrisons, which are the police and urban management officers in later generations. These are the 3,000 men Jorah had taken down. They had received formal training and had some fighting power. They would have no problem dealing with the Sons of the Harpy. "Who are you? How many other accomplices do you have?" Dany looked at the man below. The man did not speak, but kept silent with his head down. It was obvious that he was not going to say anything. Seeing this, Dany said with a little anger, "I haven't done anything to you, free people, since I became the Queen of Meereen. Why do you still risk being killed and become the Sons of the Harpy?" It has been several months since Dany occupied Meereen. The conservative nobles are tempting more Meereens to become the Sons of the Harpy every day. Otherwise, relying solely on the dead soldiers in the hands of the nobles, Meereen would not have as many people as shown in the original drama. Hearing Dany's words, the man could not help but shouted angrily, "The lowly slaves you brought with you, they burned, killed, and looted after entering the city. My wife was tortured to death by a group of thugs, and you still have the nerve to say, stinky bitch, it's all the fault of the lowly beasts you brought." Hearing the man's insults, Dany was stunned at first, and then her face looked a little ugly. When they captured Meereen, not only the Unsullied entered the city, but also the liberated slave army that followed her. Although Dany had asked the Unsullied to maintain order at that time, it was impossible for the Unsullied to watch every corner. And Dany believed that there must be many such incidents. All those who were hurt were potential reserve personnel for the Sons of the Harpy. The more Dany thought about it, the uglier her face looked. She suddenly remembered that Jack had told her at the beginning that the people who suffered the most after the fall of Meereen were the original free people of Meereen. The nobles would hide in their own pyramids to avoid the burning, killing, and looting after the fall of the city. The slaves were poor and were the objects of liberation, so naturally no one would plunder them. Only the original free people of Meereen would suffer a huge impact. They would not only be plundered by the slave army following her, but also by the slaves of Meereen. At that time, Jack gave a suggestion, which was to take out some money to make up for their losses, so as to reduce the number of the Sons of the Harpy. But at that time, Dany felt that the original free people of Meereen also oppressed slaves in the past, so she rejected Jack's proposal. "Take him down for interrogation first," Dany said to Barristan. Barristan took the man away upon hearing this. Recently, a small number of Sons of the Harpy have begun to move around at night. This has caused some trouble to the public security work in Meereen, but it has not caused any big waves. Now that a living Son of the Harpy has been caught, Barristan will naturally not miss this opportunity and will interrogate him thoroughly. After Barristan left, Dany immediately asked Missandei to call Jack over. At this time, Jack was sitting at a custom-made desk in the Prime Minister's tower. He held a homemade stone dumbbell in his left hand and looked through Meereen's taxes for this month with his right hand. Because Meereen is a city-state rather than a country, taxes are collected every 3 months. Among them, the taxes of the 1st and 2nd districts are directly handed over to Dany and Jack. The taxes of the 3rd to 13th districts are the responsibility of 11 administrators headed by Mandor. After they collected them, they handed them over to Jack, and then Jack handed them over together, with the taxes of the second district under his jurisdiction. Including the second district under Jack's jurisdiction, the taxes this time are as high as 200,000 gold dragons. Because Jack proposed a method of work for relief, the free people of Meereen had money to pay taxes without having to use physical goods and unpaid labor instead of coins. So they could collect 200,000 gold dragons, but this number is definitely not a lot. This number is somewhat different from Jack's calculation, and the error is even a bit large. Originally, according to Jack's calculation, the tax revenue of the entire Meereen should be around 300,000 gold dragons after the opening of the arena, but now it is only 200,000. It's easy to know where the missing 100,000 gold dragons went. But Jack was not angry. In the world of Game of Thrones, corruption is very normal. In the original book, Dario, who collected taxes, even embezzled half of the taxes. And the reason why Mando and other administrative officials did not embezzle more than half this time was to test Jack's attitude and Daenerys' tolerance. Jack touched his chin and did not choose to find Mando, but was ready to see the sincerity of Mando and others. Because he just remembered that Mando said that he had prepared a banquet tomorrow at the Atlantis hot pot restaurant. Dong dong dong, knocks on the door rang. Jack never worked in the main hall of the Prime Minister's tower, but in the office he chose, usually, Ivan would wait at the door. Come in. Ivan pushed the door open and entered. Prime Minister, Miss Missandei said that His Majesty would like you to come over. Ivan's expression remained unchanged, but he was a little curious about where Vitaly had gone. She had obviously followed the Prime Minister in. I know, wait a moment. Ivan closed the door and said to Missandei, outside, wait a moment, Missandei, the Prime Minister will be out soon. In the room, Jack patted Vitaly's head. Then Vitaly came out from under the table and jumped twice lightly. I'm so tired, my legs are numb from squatting. Jack laughed. Next time I'll put a layer of fur on the floor so that you can squat under it. Vitaly stuck out her tongue. I'll go back to practice swordsmanship first. Since coming to Meereen, Jack has never forgotten Vitaly's position, a capable female secretary. He hired the best swordsmanship teacher and teacher in Slaver Bay for Vitaly. So Vitaly had at least 8 classes every day to learn swordsmanship and knowledge. Her progress was also very obvious. At least she was not as stupid as when she was taken in by Jack. Vitaly opened the door and left, and Jack followed her and left, heading for the True Dragon Tower. Ivan looked at the backs of Vitaly and Jack, and looked back at the office in confusion. But he didn't have time to think about it, so he hurried to prepare a parasol for Jack. Jack was not a hypocritical person. Every time he went out, he was accompanied by many people, including guards, maids, and servants. Jack soon arrived at the main hall of the True Dragon Tower, and Dany was frowning at this time. There was no one around, so Jack started to tease. Hey, what's wrong with our mother of dragons? Someone hang my coat on Her Majesty's mouth. It's so sticky that you can hang salted fish on it. All the people present were Dante's personal maids, and they all knew Jack's temper, so naturally no one dared to move. If you say that again, I won't let you use it tonight. Really, can't you be more serious? The dagger of the son of the harpy is on our necks. What you said sounds even more indecent, okay? Jack's mouth twitched. You said that I'm not serious. And what do you mean by the sons of the harpy are already on our necks? Dany also realized that she had said something vulgar inadvertently. Her face turned red and she said, it's the sons of the harpy, the kind of assassins who wear golden masks and assassinate us everywhere. Jack's mouth twitched. Seeing your nervous and excited look, I thought you saw a mermaid. I was ready to laugh. Sons of the harpy, what are you afraid of? Jack said speechlessly. Although they have begun to appear in Meereen recently, they will definitely not become a big deal. Jack is very confident because he found that the system of collective responsibility has a very high degree of control over ordinary people. The free people of Meereen are all trapped in the system of collective responsibility, especially when not reporting a crime together will lead to conviction, and reporting not only innocence but also bounty. These assassins who had long pinned Daenerys to Meereen in the original drama have not dared to show up until now. It's no wonder that Jack doesn't take the Sons of the Harpy seriously. There is really no big threat. Seeing that Jack still didn't care, Dany immediately told him her guess and worries. Your previous guess was correct. The original free people of Meereen have really become potential reserve personnel for the Sons of the Harpy. Jack couldn't help but look at Dany a few more times, thinking that it was you, and only then did he realize that what I said was true. It's been 3 or 4 months, right? I, Jack Poseidon, need someone like you as my immediate boss. If it were someone smarter, I wouldn't dare to take bribes for whatever I want. Don't worry, the Son of the Harpy can't turn it out of my hand. If you are really worried, just make a sin order, say sorry, and take out some money to share. Dany frowned. Is this okay? I don't know, I'm just giving you a suggestion, Jack said directly. Dany pursed her lips. If it didn't work, she would have been blinded and Her Majesty would have been damaged in vain. Jack knew that Dany was worried about whether this method would work, so he expressed his opinion. I think it should be useful. Those free people don't care what dignity they have. As long as you are nobler than them and richer than them, then apologize and give them money. This way their vanity can be satisfied, and they can also gain practical benefits. Under such circumstances, as long as there is no life and death feud, who would be willing to risk the gallows to rebel? Besides, how many people are there who have a life and death feud?
I believe it won't be long before Commander-in-Chief Barristan can eradicate all the Sons of the Harpy.
While Jack was comforting Dany, he didn't forget to dig a hole for Barristan. I cry to death. I, Jack, am such a good man for trusting Sarah Barristan so much. Dany was still a little hesitant after hearing this. It was ridiculous for the noble Targaryen blood to issue a sinful order to the people of Meereen. I'll think about it again. You go back to work first. Jack gave a farewell salute and then turned and left, leaving Dany on the throne, with her face changing. After Jack returned to the Prime Minister's tower, he continued to calculate how much money he could make from various projects in Meereen next month. The next evening, Landa's Hot Pot Restaurant. Landa's Hot Pot Restaurant became popular in Meereen City in just 1 month, with one opened in every administrative district. The novel way of eating and the special soup base attract many people. Of course, another reason is that it is cheap. It can't be said to be cheap. After all, the same weight of vegetables and mutton is several times more expensive in a hot pot restaurant. But it was not expensive for nobles and businessmen, and freedmen could afford to eat it twice a month. Of course, the most important thing is that Jack escorts and gives the green light. Otherwise, the hot pot restaurant would never be able to open and make a profit in such a short period of time. Jack arrived at the door of the hot pot restaurant as promised, and Mantuo was waiting at the front desk of the store. After seeing Jack arrive, Mantu immediately stepped forward to greet him. Prime Minister, why are you here so early? Early, I think it's a bit late. Jack said with a smile. Jack seemed to have something to say. Mantuo's eyes changed slightly, and he quickly apologized and said with a smile, No, I was a little late in preparing it. But the food will be ready soon. Let's go to the private room first. Mantuo led the way, but secretly scolded Jack as a little fox. He was not very young, but when he spoke he meant 2 things. Openly or secretly. I don't know who learned it from TM. It's really disgusting and difficult to maintain. Jack is 16 years old this year, which is considered an adult in the world of Game of Thrones, but he is definitely not old, especially since Jack was still a pirate before he was 14 years old. Jack's experience and past could not be hidden from the great nobles of Meereen, and they even found out about Jack's father in a small brothel in Korth. But because of this, the nobles were puzzled as to why an illiterate son of a pirate could frequently come up with such vicious schemes. First, they divided the noble groups of Meereen, and then used various vicious methods to deceive the free people and slaves of Meereen. The entire Meereen was led by the nose. Jack didn't know what Mantu was thinking, but looked around Atlantis' decoration. Because he didn't know whether hot pot restaurants could actually make money, Jack tentatively opened 13 stores. A total of 50,000 gold dragons were spent. Now it seems that the money was not wasted. The decoration is indeed very good. After the 2 of them entered the box, the waiter brought a bottle of wine and a peanut-like fruit. Mantu immediately picked up the wine and introduced, "This is the Atlantis wine from Neptune Island. It is called Poseidon Drunk. 1 bottle costs 39 gold dragons. The quantity is limited every month." Mantuel paid 3 times the price in order to keep this bottle of Poseidon's Drunk. Jack said in a pretentious manner, "I know, the owner of their store gave me 3 bottles when they opened." Mando used a special wine opener to open Poseidon wine. and the fruity aroma of grapes and wine were intertwined and filled. Mantuo secretly sighed that no wonder it was sold so expensively. The taste was really intoxicating. Poseidon Drunk was naturally made by Jack, in order to cater to the taste of the World of Thrones. Poseidon Drunk was made from grapes. The alcohol content was slightly high, but not more than 20. And after distillation and proportioning, Poseidon Brewing has a very obvious feature. That is, it is mellow and very clear at the same time. Later, Jack plans to produce high-grain liquor and sell it to the north and beyond the Great Wall. The environment there is bitterly cold, and high-quality grain wine that can warm the body should be sold. Even if you can't sell it, you won't suffer any big loss. Just keep making wine. Jack only takes the mid to high-end route and has no ideas for the bottom market. Because whether it is Westeros or Essos, there are a large number of people at the bottom who can only afford a few copper coins for a cup of beer. This kind of beer is turbid, and there is no big profit. If Jack makes it according to this standard, it will not be competitive. But if Jack purifies the wine, the cost will go up again, and the price will not be competitive. Therefore, Jack can only go the middle and high-end route. But the middle and high-end route can also make money. The cost of a bottle of Poseidon's brew is only 4 silver coins. And man is in a period of demographic dividend. Every time there is a recruitment, there are people rushing to do it, so the labor cost can be ignored. To put it bluntly, 3098 gold dragons. Jack can earn 3097 gold dragons. Soon the hot pot dishes were also served. In addition to the lamb that Jack is familiar with, there are many vegetables that he doesn't know, and there are also many vegetables that he knows, such as beets and cabbage. Soon the two began to drink, eating and chatting about the current situation in Meereen. Meereen is now completely on the right track. Except for the Meereenese who originally had families and businesses, they continued to work in their old professions to support their families. The new freemen also made a lot of money in the projects of Cather Pass and Saltland Management, and the two projects can last for 3 or 4 months. In addition, the giant wave chamber of commerce not only opened shops everywhere in Meereen, but also contracted a large number of salt lands. The operation of shops and the management and cultivation of salt lands not only provided jobs for the new freemen, but also eased the financial pressure of Meereen. No city can survive alone, and there must be a large number of manors outside the city to support the city. The same thing happened in Meereen, but in addition to the land eroded by salt, even the manors were burned to ashes. The fiefs that Dany awarded to Jack were almost all these burned manors. At the dinner table, half of a whole bottle of Poseidon's brew was soon drunk. Seeing that Jack's glass was empty again, Mando immediately wanted to pour him wine. At this time, Jack suddenly reached out and pressed the bottle. Mando was stunned and looked at Jack in confusion, not knowing what he meant. Jack smiled and said, "Lord Mando, there is only half of this bottle of wine left. I plan to take it to His Majesty to taste. His Majesty has heard of this fine wine a long time ago. If this bottle of wine is less than half, I will not be able to explain to His Majesty. His Majesty will definitely not have enough to drink. If it is not enough, he may be angry with you and me." Jack's words fell into Mando's ears, and he immediately understood what Jack meant. "Prime Minister, is it really appropriate to give the remaining half bottle of wine to His Majesty?" Jack smiled. "Half is enough. With His Majesty's alcohol tolerance, he can only drink half a bottle." Mantua smiled and whispered, "Then, I wonder how much the Prime Minister can drink." Jack laughed and waved his hand quickly. "How about half and half, Your Majesty?" Mantua laughed. "The Prime Minister's alcohol tolerance is really good." At this time, Mantua already knew how much corruption fee he should pay in the evening, and couldn't help but secretly scold Jack for being greedy. "Waiter, another bottle of wine," Mantua shouted to the outside. Then he said to Jack, "People here have to call waiters. There are many rules, and they must follow the rules after entering. It can be seen how big the power behind them is." Jack glanced at Mantua. Sure enough, the ancients were not fools. But in the eyes of others, his relationship with the giant wave chamber of commerce was indeed too close. Not many people in the whole Meereen and even the world knew Jack's true identity. Speaking of Meereen, only Dany Jorah, Barristan, Grey Worm, and Missandei knew about it. These people followed Dany at the beginning. At that time, Jack did not intend to eat and drink for Dany, so he did not hide his identity. But others did not know. Jack specifically told Dany and others to try not to reveal their identities. Otherwise, he would return to Atlantis to continue to be a pirate. Jack did not tell all about his situation, and Dany and others only thought that Atlantis was a large-scale pirate organization. However, in the face of Mando's temptation, Jack did not hide it and said directly, "To be honest, this Chamber of Commerce is rich and has given me many gifts. Naturally, I have to take care of it." After getting the answer he wanted, Mando immediately knew in his heart and secretly thought that Jack really loved money. If Jack knew this, he would definitely punch Mando, the old man, to death. Atlantis has just started to make money now. But there are more places to spend money than Meereen. If he doesn't make more money, Atlantis will become an unfinished building. Just as Jack and Mandor were drinking and eating, Dany summoned Barristan. "Your Majesty, what do you want to talk to me about?" Barristan asked after arriving at the True Dragon Tower. Dany motioned Barristan to sit down and talk. "Sir Barristan, I selected 30 relatively smart young men from the free people of Meereen, and the Lhasa people who are allied with us also sent 20 young men. I need you to train them into real knights, who can lead troops to fight." Barristan was a little stunned. This was directly handed over to Jorah to train together. Why did he look for him alone? Although he was a little confused, Barristan didn't ask much and agreed directly. "Sir Barristan, when I was in Korth, Jack said something to me. I don't know whether it is true or false." Barristan frowned slightly when he heard this, and always felt that something was wrong with Dany. But then Dany told Barristan what Jack had said. Barristan frowned after hearing this. "I didn't pay attention to the events on Bear Island when I left Westeros, so I can't be sure whether Jorah Mormont is trustworthy. That's why I need you to train 50 knights who can lead troops to fight for me, and then let them lead the 3 Freeman legions." Barristan immediately understood that Dany was worried about Jorah's identity, so she was dispersing Jorah's power. He looked at Dany with relief. "I see all the qualities of a wise monarch in you, and your talent is comparable to your pioneer ancestors. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, I will train 50 qualified knights for you in the shortest time." Dany quickly denied it, but the smile on her face could not be concealed. Back then, the ancestor Aegon Targaryen conquered Westeros with 3 dragons, and she, Daenerys Targaryen, also had 3 dragons, and she would definitely be able to regain the Iron Throne. And sometimes after doing exercise with Jack would tell her some tips on managing the country and his subordinates while enjoying the afterglow. As the number of exercises increased, Dany naturally learned a lot of practical knowledge. For example, Dany would never think of dividing the military power in Jorah's hands. In the original play, Jorah and Barristan could do a lot for Dany, and even served as Dany's consultants on matters of all sizes, and had great decision-making power. But after Jack appeared, he not only replaced the positions of the 2 consultants, but also formed a bureaucratic group for Dany, eliminating Dany's worries about the governance of Meereen. This also led to Barristan and Jorah being forced to develop in the direction of military commanders. Barristan was fine. Joffrey dismissed him from the position of captain of the Kingsguard, which made him lose face. He was also the Kingsguard of Dany's father, so Dany could naturally use him with confidence. But Jorah was different. His identity could not withstand investigation at all, because he was originally sent by the Iron Throne to monitor Daenerys. Otherwise, the old lion in the original play would not have directly exposed Jorah's identity after Jorah's rebellion, causing Daenerys to cut off one of her arms. So now, even if Dany had told Jorah before, "I completely trust you," she would not trust Jorah with nearly 20,000 new soldiers. However, Dany did not determine that Jorah was an undercover agent. After all, Jack was a liar. But just in case, what if Jorah was really an undercover agent? Will he rebel and kill himself at the critical moment of his fight for the Iron Throne at the command of the Iron Throne? So Dany had to be on guard. Just like what Jack said last night, a suspicious king can live long. After Barristan left, Dany sat in her seat and pondered for a long time. More than an hour later, she got up and left. She was going to feed the dragon, imitating Jack's method. At night the heat dissipated, but Meereen was still brightly lit, and people were walking and strolling everywhere. After Jack returned to the Prime Minister's tower, Vitalia ran over immediately. "Brother, the Deputy Prime Minister's people came today and sent several boxes of gold, silver, jewelry, and a lot of porcelain. Take me to see." Jack didn't expect Mando to be so efficient. After lunch in the morning, the things were delivered in the afternoon. A total of 5 large boxes of things were delivered, about 50,000 gold dragons. It seems that Mando had understood Jack's meaning during the dinner. They can embezzle at most half, but half of the embezzled half must be handed over to Jack, otherwise no one will be embezzled. In addition, Daenerys granted Jack the right to govern the second district without paying taxes, so Jack can get 100,000 gold dragons at once. The prosperity of the second district is second only to the central district directly under Dany's jurisdiction, and the tax revenue every 3 months is about 40,000 gold dragons. According to Jack's speculation, the tax revenue of the central district under Dany's control must be 60,000 to 70,000 gold dragons. According to this calculation, Meereen's tax revenue is 400,000 every 3 months, and 1.6 million gold dragons a year. But unfortunately, such high tax revenue cannot last for a year. After the construction of Cather Pass and the artificial canal is completed, the tax revenue will definitely be cut in half. Perhaps after the Saw land is replanted with olive trees and grapevines, Meereen's fiscal revenue can be restored to 1 million gold dragons a year. It seems that 1 million gold dragons are a lot, but there are more places to spend money. Let alone other things, 3,000 Meereen garrisons, 18,000 freemen, and 9,000 unsullied. It costs a lot of money to feed these 30,000 troops. In addition, Meereen has no slaves now, and the salaries of servants in the Great Pyramid are not small. There are other miscellaneous expenses. It would be good if 1/10 of the tax revenue can be left in the end. What's more, with so much money, Dany may only get half of it in the end. After checking that there was no problem with the property sent by Mando, Jack ordered his servants to send the 5 boxes of gold and silver to the warehouse he bought at the dock. In order to send the bribes and tributes received back to Atlantis more conveniently, Jack bought a large warehouse directly at the dock. Every time the giant wave merchants traveled to and from Meereen, they would bring the money back to Atlantis. And the servants and guards of the Prime Minister's tower were all Atlanteans and were trustworthy. At the same time, Atlantis had formulated very strict criminal laws and surveillance for corruption and bribery. The Septennial organization was a supervisory department that Jack had just established. The joint responsibility system not only caught the son of the harpy in Meereen, but also caught Varys's little bird. At that time, Jack suddenly felt that the establishment of the intelligence department needed to be quick, because no matter what era, intelligence occupies a very important position. Therefore, Jack formed the Seagull, which is divided into 2 departments. They are the White Gull that monitors Atlantis, and a Grey Gull that monitors the whole world. Due to the particularity of this department, both departments were established by Jack himself. In order to build a good framework, Jack racked his brains to recall the organizational frameworks of Genue, he being Tai and bad people in the history of his previous life and novels. Finally, he got the framework of Seagull before his hair fell out. The highest level is the Seagull Commander-in-Chief. Then there are 2 White Gull Commanders and 2 Grey Gull Commanders. 5 official positions are set up at the level of Principal and Deputy, a total of 10 people who are the central power controllers of the Seagull organization. Next are the 1st level to 3rd level Seagulls, and the 3rd level Seagull is the lowest level. The 1st level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 300,000. The 2nd level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 200,000. The 3rd level Seagull is responsible for towns with a population of more than 100,000, and those with less than 100,000 are also under the jurisdiction of the 3rd level Seagull. And finally, there are the 1,000 households, 100 households, and 10 households under these levels of Seagulls. The 10 households manage the battalions and squads, with 5 members in the battalion and 3 members in the squad. The total number of battalions and squads under each 10 household cannot exceed 3.
These are all formally organized members.
In addition to them, a large number of informants need to be developed. Informants are not organized, and their identities are kept secret. They will only receive rewards after providing information. In this way, the basic framework of Seagull is established. The next step is to select people, build the framework, and slowly fill it with flesh and blood. Jack gave the task of the Commander-in-Chief of Seagull to Vitaly. This little girl has grown rapidly under the guidance of various teachers. Her little head is no longer as stupid as before, and her whole person reveals a smart breath. Although the little girl has never been exposed to intelligence work, Jack has given her the framework and ideas, and she just needs to learn slowly. Varys was a slave and an actor at the beginning. Didn't he also weave a big web covering the world, and was called the octopus spider? And Votela is much more reliable than the octopus spider. After all, she grew up drinking the milk given by Jack since she was 11 years old. Needless to say, the relationship between the two is natural. In addition, Jack rarely goes to the battlefield now, and the longsword tsunami that helped him a lot in the past is now just a decoration. Jack not only had tsunami, but also 2 Valyrian swords. One of them was cut off by tsunami when Jack was testing it, and then it was melted into 5 spearheads to make 5 spears. Finally, Jack officially gave Vitriol the Valyrian Dragon King armor and tsunami that he had obtained before. The meaning of this set of armor and longsword is just like Shang Fang's sword, which is a symbol of Jack's power. As long as he is wearing armor and holding a longsword, it means that Jack is here in person. Jack's full trust moved the little girl to tears and made her study even harder. At this time in the Gru family mansion, Ivan was complaining to Mantu that Jack was a vampire. He had just learned that his father's corrupt golden dragon had been handed over half to Jack Poseidon. There was no anger on Mantu's face at all. "Evan, do you know why we have to give Jack as much as he says he wants?" Ivan shook his head. "I don't know, but even if he wants half, we can give him less. He doesn't know how much tax we collect." "Haha!" Mantuo sneered and motioned to Ivan to pour him a glass of wine. Ivan immediately understood what his father meant, picked up the wine bottle, and filled the mando. "Yes, it seems that you have indeed learned something from being with Jack. At least your eyesight is much better than before." After taking a sip of wine to moisten his throat, Mantuo continued. "Son, you underestimate Jack Poseidon too much. Daenerys has also met him, often even. Do you think she can think of all the policies of Meereen today?" Ivan's face froze and he said weakly, "Isn't this what Her Majesty the Queen proposed at the court meeting? We all saw it." As he spoke, Ivan's voice gradually faded away. Thinking about it this way, Daenerys really didn't look like someone who could come up with these solutions. They had already found out about Daenerys' past, the former princess of Westeros. Then he was sold to the horseman by his brother, and later the Horse King was killed because of the Madonna's heart attack. In the end, he almost died in the Red Wasteland, was taken in by Quarth, got involved in the power struggle in Quarth, and was almost imprisoned by a wizard along with his dragon. But after arriving at Slaver's Bay, he was full of clever tricks, especially after taking Meereen. In just 1 month, Meereen began to go uphill. Even the son of the harpy, who was most worried, held tight and did not stir up any waves. "You mean these are all Jack's ideas for Daenerys?" Mantuo snorted coldly. "Who else could it be besides this little fox? He talks in a roundabout way, and I don't know whose brain he has. He's full of tricks." Ivan scratched his head. "Father, I often follow Jack. Although he has some talent, he is greedy for money and a womanizer. Could there be someone else guiding Daenerys behind her back?" Manti glanced at his son helplessly and cursed an idiot in his mind. "I have placed several handmaidens in Daenerys' Great Pyramid." According to their sources, Jack often spent the night in Daenerys' room, and his voice could be heard through the door. Once that's done, Jack will tell Dany some lessons about statecraft. After hearing this, Ivan gave up his guess. But he didn't expect that Jack, who seemed to be lecherous and lecherous on the surface, could actually have so many tricks. Thinking about it now, Ivan suddenly broke into a cold sweat on his forehead, due to the dark look in his eyes when he usually served Jack. "Father, why don't you ask His Majesty to let me stop being Jack Poseidon's attendant? You may end up weaning your heir one day." Mantu looked at Ewan, who was sweating coldly, and immediately scolded. "Idiot. If I transfer you today, you will be removed from the position of Deputy Prime Minister tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, those big nobles who have long disliked us will tear us apart." After speaking, Mantu patted his son's arm again, and comforted him. "Don't worry, as long as we stand by his side, you will not be in danger." Ivan smiled bitterly. "Well, you might as well not tell me so much. Now every time he thinks of the way Jack looked at him, he feels something is wrong. Ivan, now you know why we have to give money, honestly. We can only rely on him now, but the next generation will be different. If Daenerys can really establish a foothold in Meereen, then our family will become the center of power in Slaver's Bay in less than 50 years. This was something that could not be achieved in 500 years before. When Mantua spoke, his eyes were burning with the fire of ambition. Originally, under the suppression of the great masters, little nobles like them would never have a chance to make a comeback in their lives. But then Daenerys liberated Meereen, and the power of Meereen was reshuffled. By chance, he saw the opportunity to reach the top. Ivan, you have to remember that only if he eats well can we have enough to eat. Half of it is not much. Mentor said earnestly, while Mantu was educating his son, the garden balcony at the top of the Great Pyramid. The clanking sound of iron swords was heard, and then Barristan suddenly raised his voice and knocked the long sword out of Dany's hand. Dany sat down on the ground, sweating profusely, then took the cold water Missandei handed her and drank it in gulps. Your Majesty has made rapid progress. You now have the foundation for killing, Barristan praised. Dany really gave him too many surprises. Unlike her crazy king who only burned people, Dany not only learned knowledge from the Bachelor every day, but sometimes asked him for sword skills at night. To Barristan, Daenerys is simply the perfect king. Wildfire King Aerys III, Targaryen, Boar King Robert Baratheon, Bastard King Joffrey Baratheon. These kings are not worthy enough to carry Daenerys Targaryen's shoes. However, Daenerys said with some frustration, but there is a big gap between me and Vitriol, isn't it? Barristan twitched the corner of his mouth. Vitriol was Jack's personal maid, and Barristan was one of her many swordsmanship teachers. That little girl is a monster. There is no need to compare with her. She is the most talented swordsman I have ever seen. No one, when she grows up, even the Dawn Sword will not be his opponent. Daenerys' eyes widened in surprise. Is she so talented? Dany didn't expect Barristan to have such a high opinion of Vitriol, and even thought that the little girl could surpass the Sword of the Dawn. Barristan nodded and said, yes, any sword skill, no matter how complicated it is, she only needs you to explain it once. The long sword is like her arm. This is the realm that many knights pursue, and she is born with it. In Barristan's opinion, Vitriol's talent is unique in the world. When Barristan taught her, she saw the shadow of water dancing swordsmanship in her. It is estimated that she had learned all the water dancing swordsmanship by then. Barristan helped Dany up and comforted her. Your Majesty, not everyone's talents are so good. You have already done a great job. There is no need to be discouraged. Dany stood up and patted her butt. I'm not discouraged. After all, I practice swordsmanship to protect myself at critical moments. I can't be used in normal battles. Sectun Barristan. Dany's face suddenly became serious. Barristan quickly replied, I'm here, Your Majesty. In less than half a year, we will go to war with the slave owners. I plan to let you lead the Black Dragon army to garrison Meereen. After thinking about it, Dany still felt uneasy about Jorah, so she decided to let Barristan lead the Black Dragon army. The Black Dragon army has the strongest combat power, and armor and weapons are also supplied to the Black Dragon army first. Then select the best one from the knights that Barristan will train to lead the weakest Green Dragon army. Finally, the White Dragon army, which is between the two in combat power, will be led by Jorah. If he is not a spy for the Iron Throne, it will not chill his heart. But to be honest, in terms of leading troops to fight, Barristan should be the strongest among Dany's men. When he was young, he commanded the Battle of the Nine Copperplate King, which was a battle of tens of thousands of people. As for Jorah, he may not have commanded an army of more than 1,000 people. If she wasn't worried about her own safety, Dany would have wanted Barristan to go to the Cather Pass to train. But unfortunately, there were too few people around to protect her, and Jogo, Ago, and Rakaro were also sent out by Dany at Jack's suggestion. Dany still had more than 20 Dothraki who could fight. At Jack's suggestion, the three of them each established a small tribe in the Dothraki Sea, and then slowly expanded to the surrounding areas, with Dany's support. The next day, Barristan set out for the Cather Pass early. The young man sent by the Lazar tribe arrived, and he had to go and claim him, and take a look at how Jorah was training his soldiers. The construction progress of Cather Castle was also a top priority. Fortunately, it took less than a morning to get from Meereen to Cather Pass. In addition, Barristan was traveling light, and they were all cavalry, so naturally his speed was not slow. After arriving at the Cather Pass, Barristan first looked at Cather Castle. At this time, the progress of Cather Castle was half completed, and it seemed that it should be completed before the slave owners came. At this time, Jorah also received the news of Barristan's arrival, so he brought 20 Lazar boys to find Barristan. Although the two were from the same faction of Westeros, their relationship was not very good. In Barristan's eyes, Jorah not only had an unknown origin and purpose, but also was over 50 years old and always worried about His Majesty's health. He deserved to die. Similarly, Barristan was not a good thing, in Jorah's eyes. First he betrayed Dany's father, then he was expelled from the Iron Throne, and came to Dany in disgrace to beg for mercy. A stinky old man over 50 actually wanted to compete with him for favor. Damn it. However, both of them were very loyal to Dany, so they would not show their dislike in person. Sarah Barristan. These are the 20 young men sent by the Lazars. I still have to train the soldiers, so I will not accompany you. Jorah's underlying meaning was, these are the people you want. Take them and get out of here. You are not welcome here. But Barristan said seriously, Sir Jorah, Her Majesty is very concerned about the progress and training of Castle Caesar. So when I come to lead the people, I will take the opportunity to investigate the situation. Looking at the proud Barristan, Jorah felt very unhappy. But this was a task given to Barristan by Dany after all. So Jorah had to introduce the recent situation. The construction of Castle Caesar is progressing very fast. There are enough workers, they are paid for meals, and they are very enthusiastic about their work. If it weren't for the stewards sent by Jack, the progress would be even faster. Barristan frowned when he heard this. Why do you say that? When facing Jack, the two of them had surprisingly consistent positions. Originally, these workers worked 12 hours a day, had 3 meals, and received 3 copper coins. But the stewards compressed the time to 8 hours. Barristan's doubts became even greater. Is there anything wrong with compressing it to 8 hours? Castle Caesar's progress doesn't seem to have any delays. Suddenly, Barristan's face changed. Wait, don't tell me Castle Caesar is just a showpiece. Jorah's mouth twitched, and he quickly said, That's not the case. Castle Caesar's materials are very solid, and the strategic materials stored inside are also sufficient. Then why are you saying this? Barristan was a little annoyed. Are you really playing him? Seeing Barristan was angry, Jorah calmly explained. The stewards compressed the workload from 10 hours to 8 hours, and provided lunch and dinner every day for only 2 copper coins. You mean they're corrupt? What a bunch of vampires. I will definitely ask Jack when I go back how he disciplines his officials. Jorah shook his head and continued, It's useless to ask. The money that group of people embezzled was all sent to Jack. I have investigated it before, and they hardly concealed their corruption. Barristan quickly took 2 breaths. That group of didn't the freemen protest? This is Jack's insidiousness. He told the freemen that he reduced the working hours from 12 hours to 8 hours. At the same time, he changed 3 meals and 3 copper coins to 2 meals and 2 copper coins. But the copper coins saved would be used to buy meat for their meals. Not only were the freemen not angry, but they were grateful to him. In fact, the meals of the freemen were already meaty. It's just that a few more fat pigs were added, and so many people had to share them, hee. Alas, hearing this, Barristan sighed. When he attended the royal meeting in King's Landing before, he had never eaten pork, but he had seen pigs run. He knew that even if he reported it to Dany, it would be useless. Jack would say that he shortened the working hours for the freemen, and used the copper coins saved to add meals for the freemen. Anyway, the account books of the kitchen were all managed by his people, and there was too much room for operation. But even if he knew it was useless, he still had to tell Dany about what happened here, even if it would offend the king's hand Jack Poseidon. This is the most basic loyalty of the Queen's Iron Guard. If he chose to conceal this matter because he was afraid of Jack's revenge, he might as well find a place to retire after being expelled from the Iron Throne. How long will it take to complete this? Barristan stopped asking Jack about corruption. 3 months at most. With the current manpower and material resources, Castle Caesar can be built within 3 months. After all, it is just a military fortress, and there is no need to build a luxurious hall. 3 months! Barristan breathed a sigh of relief. It would take at least 5 months for the slave owners to come, so there was plenty of time. How is the army training? Is it going well? Jorah pursed his lips. Not very well, but it basically looks like an army, and the infantry training is not bad. The infantry is trained by the Unsullied, and the cavalry and archers rely entirely on Jorah to teach them riding and archery. The Free Folk army is different from the Unsullied army. The Free Folk Legion is a composite legion, a real army with cavalry, archers, and infantry. The Unsullied Legion is pure infantry, and only infantry. If Dany relies on the Unsullied to march into Westeros alone, without dragons and Dothraki cavalry, it is very likely that she will not be able to defeat even the Westerlands. Of course, the Unsullied Legion is still very strong, but the Westerlands army is excellent in both weapons and equipment, and individual quality, and there are thousands of knights wearing heavy armor. After watching the training of the three legions for a while, Barristan had a good idea in his mind. After all, he was a general who had commanded tens of thousands of people, and Barristan saw the situation of the army at a glance. So he decided to ask Her Majesty the Queen when he returned, and bring the Black Dragon army back to Meereen for training. By the way, he could also teach 50 young men how to lead troops to fight, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Barristan did not leave until noon, and gave Jorah a lot of advice before leaving. Although Jorah was not convinced by this, he accepted it. After all, Barristan's suggestions were very practical. At the same time, Jorah also realized the insufficiency of his ability. After all, he was just the Earl of Bear Island. Bear Island was so barren that he couldn't even gather 100 conscripts. The garden at the top of the True Dragon Pyramid. Dany beside Jack rolled her eyes. No more. Then, Dany exited the dragon spirit state. The human light in Drogon's eyes slowly faded, and the wildness took over his brain again. Jack held Dany in his arms, and wiped the sweat from her forehead carefully. Not bad, you held on for a few more minutes. If you hadn't refused to communicate with the Black Spirit during the hatching of the dragon egg, you wouldn't be so tired now. Dany pouted her lips and argued unconvincedly. Who knows that the dragon egg will hatch? Think about it. When you are dreaming, a giant dragon over 200 meters long is chasing you, and black flames are sprayed from its mouth. Aren't you afraid? Jack immediately remembered the first time he entered the dragon dream. He was also panicked at that time. Fortunately, that was the last time. I am different from you. You are an extremely rare dragon spirit master. Dragon riders like me will only enter the dragon spirit, dragon dream state once before the dragon egg hatches. But you can enter the dragon spirit state all the time. There is a group of extremely special people in the world of Game of Thrones. They are called shapeshifters. They can invade animals and even human consciousness through their powerful soul consciousness. For example, if you control a wolf, it is generally called a wolf spirit, and if you control an eagle, it is called an eagle spirit. Some people with outstanding talents can even control multiple animals. For example, north of the Great Wall of Westeros, there is a 6-shaped man named Varimire who can control 6 kinds of animals. And Dany is worthy of being the most pure descendant of Targaryen in history. According to records, even the Dragon King of Valyria is extremely rare to become a dragon spirit master. Some time ago, Dany accidentally entered the dragon spirit state. Later, after asking Jack, she found that Jack could not enter the dragon spirit state like herself. This made Daenerys very happy. She finally had something that Jack could not compare with. Later, at Jack's suggestion, Dany also tried to establish a dragon spirit link with Viserion and Rhaegal, but both ended in failure. Even after the failure, Viserion and Rhaegal had obvious resistance to Daenerys. It seems that a person can only enter the dragon spirit state with one dragon, and after establishing a relationship, the dragon rider will be alienated by other dragons. Fortunately, Dany entered the dragon spirit state with Drogon at that time. Otherwise, if she chose Rhaegal, it would be a big loss. Rhaegal. After Jack left, Drogon came forward and gently rubbed Dany. After establishing the dragon spirit link and the fusion of consciousness, the relationship between them became much closer. Even Drogon's intelligence has improved a lot. Animals will become smarter after being channeled, all thanks to the powerful mental power of the skin changer. Dany reached out and touched Drogon's ferocious dragon horn, then looked worriedly at Viserion and Rhaegal, who were fighting for food in the distance. Dany herself could clearly feel that the white and green dragons were much more distant from her. They were still obedient now, because Drogon was their dragon king, or the head dragon. The 3 dragons lived in groups since birth, and Drogon naturally became the head dragon. They just listened to Drogon, not Daenerys. But dragons are dragons after all. After a few years, it is hard to guarantee that Viserion and Rhaegal, who are increasingly alienated from Dany, will run away from home and become wild dragons. Thinking of this, Dany stroked her belly, and a calculating look flashed in her eyes. Although the witch had tricked her at the time, and said that she could no longer give birth, the truth was far less serious. Since entering the dragon spirit state, with Drogon, the physique of the unburned has been strengthened again. Ordinary flames still make Dany feel burning, but the pain is greatly reduced. Even the burning of the flame can heal her injuries and remove negative states, such as poisoning. But she didn't tell Jack about these things, because she also discovered the difference between herself and ordinary people. In the history of the entire Targaryen family, there has never been such a powerful unburned and dragon spirit as her. In other words, she is now capable of giving birth. She has seen a doctor and there is no problem. If she can get pregnant with Jack's seed, then she can make Viserion and Rhaegal the dragons of her children, so that all 3 dragons will have knights. There is even a chance to tie Jack to her side through her offspring, so that the Iron Throne will be easy. Although Jack is now her king's hand, the two often communicate deeply, and Dany knows very well that Jack can't always be inferior to others. For example, sometimes when it is Dany's turn to ride, Jack always cheats. Say a real man lives in the world, how can he be depressed and inferior to others for a long time, and then press Dany down? Many small details can reveal Jack's ambition, so he is going to play dirty. Even if Jack finally goes out to start his own business, at least he should leave 2 children to control Viserion and Rhaegal. Dany really doesn't want to find other wild Targaryen bloodlines. Not to mention the character and feelings. It is not certain whether the bloodline can meet the conditions of dragon riding. Otherwise it would not have been so long that only she and Jack hatched a baby dragon. So Jack's bloodline is what Daenerys covets the most. Thinking of this, Dany decided to make Jack leave seeds no matter what. As long as the bloodline of her offspring is pure enough, she can hatch dragons continuously through dragon eggs. Even relying on his super strong unburned and dragon spirit physique, it is not impossible for the Targaryen family to rule Westeros and Essos in a few hundred years and rebuild the Targaryen empire like Valyria. Drogon looked at his mother, who suddenly started to laugh foolishly, with worry flashing in his eyes, and licked Dany's face with his tongue. As if to say, "Don't scare me, Mom. What should I do if you are stupid?" Dany retracted her thoughts. This matter is not difficult to handle, because Jack never takes protective measures, and I believe she will get pregnant soon. At this time, Jack didn't know that Dany had regained the ability to get pregnant. He would never have thought that the Unburned had such an ability, which was almost comparable to the heart of the ocean. Vitelier suddenly picked up the long sword in Jack's hand, and the wooden sword was directly against Jack's throat. Jack quickly raised his hands to surrender, and Vitelier smiled lightly.
How about I'm awesome, right?
Awesome. Tell me, what do you want? Jack and Vitelli made a bet just now. The 2 of them were in a one-on-one duel, and the loser had to satisfy one of the other's requests. Vitelli's eyes rolled, and she immediately showed a malicious smile. She patted her tight thighs. Tonight, if you can hold on for an hour, I won't ask for anything more. If you can't hold on, you have to ask for 3 more. Jack's face darkened. Stinky girl, you have some fancy ideas. In the evening, the blood-red setting sun enveloped the free city-state of Meereen, and both sides of the city's avenues were full of free people returning home from get-off work. Suddenly, a commotion was heard, and many onlookers looked in the direction of the sound. It turned out that Barristan had returned with the Lazar exchange students. A few days ago, Dany had released the news that she would form a 50-member knight group. Excluding the 20 Lazar exchange students, there were 30 places left to be selected from the civilians and nobles of Meereen, and everyone under the age of 18 could participate in the selection. At that time, some neutral Meereen nobles sent all their second sons over, and even more free people participated in the selection. In the end, the selection results came out, and only 6 free people were selected, and the remaining 24 places were all for nobles. This incident also caused a lot of discussion among the free people at the time, wondering if there was any shady deal. But the fact is that the physique of the noble boys is better than that of the free people, and they are well nourished and do not lack the most basic education. Giving 20 places to the Lezers at that time also caused dissatisfaction among some nobles and civilians. Many nobles whose second sons were not selected believed that the lowly Lazars were not worthy of the opportunity to be knighted by Her Majesty the Queen herself. So the 20 Lazar boys attracted a crowd of onlookers as soon as they entered the city, wanting to see if these Lazars had 3 heads and 6 arms, and could directly get 20 places. The Lazars finally got this opportunity, so they naturally sent out the 20 most outstanding boys. Borhasi looked at this group of excited passers-by, and couldn't help but curiously ask Barristan if they were too popular.
Barristan raised his eyebrows.
He had never seen such a confident Lazar. In his impression, Lazars were all submissive. Of course not. They want to hit you. If they hadn't considered that they would be fined by the Ministry of Health established by the Prime Minister's tower for littering, they would have thrown rotten leaves and feces long ago. Borhasi was stunned and puzzled. Sir, may I ask why they are so hostile to us? Didn't Her Majesty form an alliance with our Raza tribe?
Barristan was in a good mood, so he explained.
It is precisely because of the alliance that His Majesty showed great sincerity and gave you Raza people 20 places. Seeing that Borhasi was still smart, Barristan gave him more advice. Don't think that you are just the most basic knights, but the significance here is very important. Once you have made great contributions in the process of liberating the entire slave bay, His Majesty will naturally confer the title. In other words, you are the candidates for the future dukes, marquises, and earls of Slave Bay. Borhasi's eyes flashed a gleam. He is 18 years old. This year, in this short 18-year career, the town built by his family has suffered hundreds of attacks. Every time the town just had some savings, the horsemen would come to plunder, the livestock were swept away, and the people were sold to slave owners like livestock. When he was 9 years old, a Dothraki broke into his room, but he was attacked with a dagger and died on the spot. From that day on, he understood that centaurs would also die. Centaurs were not invincible demons. They would also die if their throats were pierced by a dagger. So Borhasi was determined to change the situation of the Raza people. He believed that if this continued, the Raza people would sooner or later be wiped out by other races. In the following 9 years, he kept persuading his father to rise up in resistance. But his father always said that for the survival and continuation of the tribe, he must not resist. Just when Borhasi was about to accept his fate, Daenerys' messenger arrived. The messenger said that the Dragon Queen was willing to form an alliance with the Raza people, and send the Unsullied to provide shelter for the Raza people's town. At that time, Borhasi was ecstatic. With the protection of the Unsullied, he would not be afraid of the looting of the centaurs. But later, Borhasi discovered that the Dragon Queen's Unsullied only provided shelter for towns, and many small tribes did not have the strength to build towns, so they could only continue to endure looting. Until some time ago, the Dragon Queen was going to select 20 people from the Raza people to be enthroned as knights and teach them how to lead troops in battle and govern the country. So the 20 strongest Raza tribes all sent their best second sons to Meereen. Borhasi even gave up the right to inherit the tribe and volunteered. Although the Raza people are gentle, even cowardly, they are not stupid and naturally have their own thoughts. The population of the Raza people has dropped from more than 10 million at the beginning to less than 2 million now. The 5 largest tribes understand that if they continue like this, the race may really perish. And if you want the race to be immortal, there are only 2 ways. Find someone to rely on, or resist yourself. It is not realistic to seek shelter from others, because this will offend the fierce Dothraki people, or even the Gis people in the Slaver Bay. If they rose up to resist, no one would be willing to form an alliance with the cowardly Raza people. Just when the Raza people's top leaders were thinking hard, a Dragon Queen who liberated slaves suddenly rose in the Slave Bay. What made the Raza people even more ecstatic was that when they were still hesitating whether the Mother of Dragons was willing to form an alliance with the Raza people, the other party's envoys had already arrived at the Raza plain. And the conditions given were very sincere. Not only did they have the protection of the Unsullied, but they were also willing to purchase food at a high price, and finally promised to help the Raza people build cities in the future. So the Raza people also showed their sincerity. That is to lower the price of food. If the Raza people have anything to offer, it must be food. The centaurs are not good at cooking carbohydrate staples, so they are more likely to plunder livestock and people, so the Raza people still have a lot of food. Borhasi clenched his fists and made up his mind that he must become the greatest duke. When he is strong enough, he must kill all the Doseki and destroy the country and the race. Barristan did not see the change in Borhasi's expression, and was still talking about the etiquette that he needed to pay attention to when he met His Majesty later. Soon Barristan brought everyone to the True Dragon Pyramid. Borhasi looked at the current True Dragon Pyramid with a shocked face. A black dragon was carved on the entrance gate, and the three big characters True Dragon Hall were cast in gold above it. Borhasi had seen the Great Pyramid when he followed his father to sell grain. At this time, the bronze statue of the harpy above the pyramid was replaced by a dragon statue. And not only on the top of the pyramid, almost all the portraits and sculptures of the sons of the harpy and Meereen have been replaced with black dragons. Barristan looked at the 20 people behind him, and after reminding them again not to offend Her Majesty the Queen, he led a few people into the Hall of the Dragon. Your Majesty, Barristan bowed. The 20 people behind him quickly imitated Barristan and shouted, Your Majesty! Very good. You look very energetic. Dany carefully looked at the 20 young Raza people below. Each of them was very strong and not at all cowardly, just a little nervous, but nervousness was normal. Don't be nervous. Since you can come to Meereen, it means that you are the best. I will canonize you as my knights. If your talent is good enough, you will show your strength in the next Liberation War and become barons, viscounts, or even earls. After speaking, Dany came to the stage and took the long sword that had been prepared long ago from Missandei. Coming to Borhasi at the front, looking at the young man in front of him who was trembling with excitement, Dany said solemnly, Kneel down. Borhasi immediately knelt on one knee, waiting for Dany's canonization. What's your name? Your Majesty, my name is Borhasi, and your reputation is well known. Borhasi shouted. Barristan's eyes were full of admiration. He felt that this young man was very good from the very beginning. If his swordsmanship is good, he might consider teaching him all his skills. Dany was also very satisfied with Borhasi's performance, so she directly put the long sword on Borhasi's shoulder and started the ceremony of canonization. Borhasi, I canonize you as a free knight in the name of the Queen. From today on, are you willing to protect the weak, fearless of difficulties, brave and fearless, just and kind? Are you willing to be loyal to your queen and her offspring forever? Are you willing to give everything for your queen? I am willing. I will give you everything I have, my long sword, my soul, everything I have. In order to show enough loyalty, Dany canonized everyone personally, which also made this group of Raza people feel respected. At the same time, it also made the unhappiness caused by the free people when they entered the city disappear. After the canonization was completed, Dany said, From today on, you are the free knights under the Queen of Meereen. But you only have the name. Next, I hope you can learn from Sir Barristan and become a real knight. Although Sir Barristan is old, he was the most powerful knight in Westeros when he was young, and the captain of the King's Guard. Finally, Daenerys did not forget to praise the old man Barristan. This made Barristan very happy, and he immediately promised that he would train these young men wholeheartedly and provide Dany with a group of perfect knights. Then Barristan brought these young men to the outskirts of Meereen. There are already 30 people here, knights selected from Meereen, and Dany has already canonized them. After entering the camp, the young man immediately came up. Sir Barristan, you are finally back. I thought you were going to spend a night in the barren land of Raza Plain. Borhasi frowned behind Barristan. Hearing this, he knew that Barristan was carrying Raza people, but he was still so rude. A square-faced boy behind Borhasi couldn't help but step forward to argue, but was stopped by Borhasi. Borhasi shook his head and signaled Lil Rowie to be patient. Although Lil Rowie was a little impulsive, he still listened to his elder brother. Borhasi was a very shrewd person. Although Raza was the Queen's ally, he would not make a decision without authorization before he figured out the identity of the boy. When Abdulaziz Glaza saw a group of Raza boys were angry, the smile on his face became more presumptuous. Barristan immediately said, Abdul, you are a knight now. Don't say such things again. Besides, I went to the Cather Pass, not the Raza Plains. Where there are people, there are fights, especially when there are clear divisions within a group. As the second son of the Glaza family, Abdulaziz's status is not as good as his brother, but it is still very important. After all, the Glaza family is the third largest noble in Meereen. When the ancient Gez Empire was destroyed by Valyria, the founder of their family participated in the construction and establishment of Meereen. Moreover, their family is a neutral faction, and Dany has always wanted to win over the Glaza family. It is precisely because of this that Barristan treats Abdulaziz Glaza more friendly. Then Barristan took Borhasi and others to get war horses. armor and weapons. When Borhasi passed by Abdulaz's Glaza, he suddenly said to Rory, "Don't let them clash. We must not forget the oath that Her Majesty the Queen made when she conferred the title on us. Otherwise, wouldn't we become knights who are in two minds?" Abdulaziz Glaza's face darkened. He didn't expect that the sheepman who was only worthy of being a slave before would dare to mock him. "As long as you are still in Meereen, just wait and see. I will let you go home in disgrace." Abdul thought viciously in his heart. He was going to teach this ignorant sheepman a lesson in the next training. He wanted to let these sheepmen know that they, a group of nobles, have been exposed to higher education since childhood, and they are definitely not comparable to the stupid and barbaric sheepmen. Thinking so, Abdul returned to his tent. He decided to increase the amount of training tonight. Then he severely taught the arrogant Raza man a lesson in the next combat training. On the way back, Abdul met his good brother Stavan Hazaka. Compared with the arrogance of Abdulaziz Glaza, Stavan Hazaka was much more rational and smarter. "You shouldn't go. It will only make Sir Barristan have a worse impression of you," Stepton said. Abdul sneered. "I hope that old man is as powerful as Her Majesty the Queen said." Stepton sighed. Abdul grew up with him since childhood, and he knew the other's temperament too well. However, it was Abdul's temperament that made him defend him desperately when his elder brother wanted to kill him out of jealousy. Seeing Abdul turned and left, Staffan hurriedly chased after him, saying as he walked, "I asked when I visited Prime Minister Jack in the Prime Minister's tower the day before yesterday. Sir Barristan was one of the most powerful knights in Westeros when he was young. Prime Minister Jack, the politician who only knows how to lick his majesty and values money? Do you think I will believe what he said?" Stavian's mouth twitched. In fact, the Prime Minister's strength may be far beyond our imagination. "When I went there, he was lifting dumbbells. Dumbbells as big as your head." Abdul suddenly stopped, turned around, tilted his head, stared at Staffan and asked, "You didn't lie to me?" Then he gestured with his hands. "My head is so big. The 50 canonized young knights all have their own separate tents, and their treatment is provided in accordance with that of real knights." In Abdu's tent, Staffan lit a candle, and the darkness was immediately dispelled by the flames. Stepton sat on the bed, tilting his head to look at Abdu, who was doing push-ups. His fair cheeks revealed a softness under the firelight. If it weren't for the obvious Adam's apple, anyone who saw Staban for the first time would not have thought that he was a man. Stepton held his chin with one hand and said softly, "According to my calculations, Prime Minister Jack's strength should be 3 to 4 of you, which means that he can blow your head with one punch. Even if he is born with supernatural power, he will be injured by alcohol and sex sooner or later, and I will catch up with him sooner or later," Emilia said, unconvinced. Hearing this, Stepton immediately became interested. He first went out and looked around, and came to Abdu after making sure that there was no one. Abdu looked at Stavan blankly. "What are you going to do? Are you plotting a rebellion?" "What rebellion? Let me tell you. You know the Blackbird I founded, right?" "Of course I know. Didn't you invest all the money you earned in it?" Blackbird was an intelligence agency that Stepton founded to prevent his brother from killing him. It was small in scale and was used to monitor Dora Hazaka. I arranged a few Blackbirds to serve as servants in the Prime Minister's tower. According to them, the Prime Minister is really greedy for money. But his lust is fake. His usual food and drink expenses are similar to those of ordinary nobles. Also, it is said that the Prime Minister likes painting very much. He always draws some messy things on paper, and he is mysterious and doesn't let others see it. Abdu raised his eyebrows and suddenly said, in a mean way, "Maybe the Prime Minister is planning a rebellion, and then imprison His Majesty to give birth to children for himself, and also occupy His Majesty's 3 dragons to give birth to children for his own dragons." Stavan smiled lightly. "Be careful that there are ears on the other side of the wall. If the Prime Minister hears it, he will directly confiscate your family and exterminate your clan." Although he was joking, Stepton was also reminding Abdu that if Jack really heard it, he would definitely lose a layer of skin. The two joked and discussed their next plans. They were both the second sons of the family. Especially for the second son like Stavan, who doesn't get along with the eldest son, setting up a new family is almost the only principle. No matter where in the world of Game of Thrones, the primogeniture system is an absolute system to stabilize the family. Even in Atlantis, Jack is also prepared to continue to use the primogeniture system and the feudal system in the next 30 years. After the education system is improved, it will enter the feudal society through reform. When Jack is old, Atlantis will enter the capitalist society or something else in the future, which is not something Jack can control. He may have retreated back to one of the crystal towers or the vaults and the catacombs. I do not know. They were all afraid. The Septons, the Septas, the Sparrows, the Begging Brothers, even the Knights. Sea King Island. Korakshu. Newgate was furious. Korakshu was startled by Newgate's voice and suddenly got up from the cowshed. Newgate pointed at the skeletons of the 2 cows, and was so angry that he couldn't even speak. The beard on his lips trembled, and there was an inexplicable sense of humor. However, after Korakshu found that the person coming was Newgate, he yawned disdainfully, swept the cow skeleton with his tail, and then soared into the sky. The officials around Newgate also looked miserable. He was originally one of the senior slaves. Being assigned to this place as a manager, I thought it was a high-paying and easy job. I didn't expect that Korakshu would come to collect money from time to time and eat more than a dozen cows. Who can take responsibility for this? Sure, why don't you write a letter to His Majesty the Sea King? No one can control it here. The oxen are always eaten and can't work at all. Alas, Newgate sighed. I know, I will write to His Majesty the Sea King, and ask him to come back and take Korakshu away. Excuse me, sir. I will prepare the ravens. In order to facilitate the delivery of letters, Newgate purchased 10 ravens. This kind of ravens with a little magic color in the Game of Thrones is expensive, but it is very convenient to deliver information. Back to his residence, Newgate took out the letter and first reported on the current development of the Sea King Island. The manufacturing process of fine salt and soap is already familiar, and the next step is to choose an address to build a factory. Newgate suggested building a factory on Crescent Island in the northeast, because according to the planning of Neptune Island, factories cannot be built in Neptune City. At the same time, thousands of acres of fertile land were reclaimed around the central lake, and a group of people were added every 2 months. The construction of the city and the reclamation of the land were proceeding in an orderly manner. After writing about the development of Atlantis, Newgate took a deep breath, took out a new piece of paper, and began to denounce Korakshu's crimes. At first he only ate wild animals on the island, then he began to steal livestock and poultry, and finally he began to eat openly. After sealing the letter, Newgate sent it to Slaver Bay through a raven. Looking at the disappearing back of the raven, Newgate murmured, "Your Majesty, come back quickly and take Korakshu away. It is simply a stumbling block on the development of Neptune Island." At this time, there are more than 20,000 people on Neptune Island. When the next batch of people arrives at the beginning of next month, Neptune Island will have 30,000 people. According to Jack's plan, the Sea King Island needs at least 100,000 people to reproduce, and then introduce external population according to the situation. Lord Newgate! Lord Newgate, are you there? Suddenly, a servant's voice came from outside. Newgate looked in the direction of the voice, and saw that the person who came was Ingvar Tran, who was responsible for digging the canal. What's wrong? Newgate looked at Ingvar, who was sweating profusely. Why are you so panicked? Someone's dead. Someone's dead. Newgate's face changed. The laws of Atlantis were compiled by Jack himself, so issues involving human life are very serious. What happened? How did they die? How many people died? Newgate poured a glass of water and handed it to Ingvar, signaling him to speak slowly and not to rush. Since you asked me to dig the canal, I found something wrong. The fish in the lake are too small. This means there are large beasts in the lake, but I didn't care until just now. When the Note 7 canal was opened, 2 workers were dragged down by something on the shore. Atlantis had just been established, and Jack attached great importance to the shaping of culture and faith. This group of slaves who came to the Sea King Island have adapted to the life and cultural customs of Atlantis customized by Jack. They firmly believe that every life is a blessing from the sea god, so they must never let down their own and others' lives. Because of this, Ingvar was full of regret at the moment. 2 lives were lost because of his carelessness. Seeing Ingvar's regretful face, Newgate comforted him and then asked Ingvar to take him to the scene of the incident. Ingvar led the way with a face full of self-blame and said, "It's all my fault. I found something wrong when I first observed the Sky Eye Lake, but I didn't expect that the thing in the lake could actually drag people into the water. There are nearly 10 lakes and rivers of various sizes on the Sea King Island. The largest river almost spans the entire Sea King Island, and the center of the river is like an eye. So it is also called the Central Lake, the Central River, or the Sky Eye Lake. Because when Ingvar was in Slave Bay, he was responsible for digging canals and irrigating the land for the slave owners' estates. So Newgate let him take charge of this matter and gave him 300 people. Now it's 2098. At that time, Ingvar found something very wrong when he was observing the terrain. It stands to reason that the Sky Eye Lake is so big, there should be a lot of animals drinking water around it. But the animals on the island would rather go to some small streams to compete for water resources than drink water in the Sky Eye Lake. This shows that there is something terrible in the water. But at that time, Ingvar's idea was, is there anything more terrible than humans? So he didn't pay much attention to this matter. It wasn't until 2 workers were attacked this morning that he realized the seriousness of the matter. Perhaps the things in the water are much larger and more aggressive than he imagined. Soon Newgate came to the Knowledge 7 Canal. According to the plan, there will be no private farmland on Neptune Island. All farmland belongs to the royal family, and then the royal family will hire people to cultivate the farmland. The first state-owned grain production base is set to have 40,90,000 mu, or 3026 square kilometers of land. After that, canals will be dug along Tinian Lake to divert 49 branch streams to irrigate the land. The accident happened in the recently dug Knowledge 7 tributary, which had an accident when the water was finally passed. At this time, the scene of the incident had been circled by the law enforcement team, and the surrounding crowd was full of melon-eating people. This kind of thing can't be concealed on Neptune Island. Melons spread much faster than government orders. The crowd consciously made way for Newgate. He came to the front. There was no trace of anything useful at the scene. Only a broken hand was left. Newgate looked for a long time, but couldn't figure out what was going on. But the crowd around him all looked at the oldest man on the island expectantly, hoping that Newgate could give a definite answer. Newgate's face was not very good. It would be strange if he could see what was going on with just one hand. Although he was the oldest on the island, his knowledge might not be as good as some of the previous senior slaves. At the critical moment, he suddenly remembered that there was some content about the origin of Atlantis culture in the book My World, written by Jack. So Newgate immediately showed a little fear and said loudly, "This is a water monster. Look at this broken hand. It is obvious that when the water monster swallowed this poor man whole, he instinctively stretched out his hand to call for help, but in the end only a broken hand was left." Newgate's words only made people believe 3 points. But his exaggerated expression and body movements made people believe 7 points. Although there were true gods in the Game of Thrones before the runaway system harvested the gods, most people in the world are still atheists. Especially in the continent of Essos. Most nobles only believe in the money in their hands, not the ethereal and illusory gods. Especially in the era of magic exhaustion before the appearance of the Red Comet and the Dragon. Otherwise the wizards of Korth would not be called charlatans. At that time in Karth, Zero and the wizards were ridiculed as nouveau riche and charlatans. Most people are not interested in things like water monsters in old grandmother's stories, but now that the facts are in front of them, Newgate made everyone believe his words. But then someone asked Newgate how to solve it. Newgate blinked his eyes and then said, "This I have to go back and study it to see if His Majesty the Sea King left any way to deal with it." When he left. Although Newgate's ability is average, he is absolutely loyal to Jack. On the island of the Sea King, many people have never seen the so-called His Majesty the Sea King. But Newgate would praise Jack whenever he had the chance, which led to the people on the island being very curious and respectful of Jack. When the people who were eating melons heard Newgate say this, they all prayed that the Sea King left a way to deal with it. Newgate quickly promised that even if the Sea King did not leave a countermeasure, he would invite the Sea King back to take charge of the situation. After a while, the crowd felt bored, and left one after another. Newgate hurried back to his room and took out the My World. After scanning the catalog, he finally found his goal under the title of Culture, Sacrificial Culture. If he remembered correctly, he should have seen the content of sacrificing water monsters in the Sacrificial Culture section. However, after reading carefully, Newgate shook his head in disappointment, because he found that the only function of sacrificing water monsters was to stabilize people's hearts, and the premise was that there were no water monsters in the river. But there was really a water monster in Tianyan Lake, and it even ate 2 people just now. And Newgate believed that after the water monster ate people this time, it would definitely continue to look for targets. Thinking of this, Newgate quickly issued an order to suspend the excavation of the river tributaries. In addition to the necessary drinking water, the number of times to go to the river should be reduced as much as possible. After thinking about it, Newgate couldn't think of any good solution. He could only write another letter to Jack and beg Jack to come back quickly. At this time, Korakshu fell from the sky by the Tianyan Lake. He had just captured 5 monkeys. After a full meal, he was going to drink some water and go back to rest. However, just after drinking 2 sips, a black shadow suddenly appeared under the water. Korakshu reacted very quickly and immediately leaned back to distance himself. In the blink of an eye, the water surface suddenly exploded. A monster that looked like a lizard broke through the water surface, opened its big mouth, full of sharp teeth, and bit the air. Of course, if Korakshu hadn't reacted quickly, this bite would definitely hurt him. Even the slender neck might be bitten directly into 2 sections. When the monster fell heavily to the ground, Korakshu could see the monster's appearance clearly. The whole thing looked like a big lizard, with teeth turned outward, as if it had no lips, and a pair of huge fins behind its head. The forelimbs are like ducks, with thin membranes between the 5 toes, and the hind limbs are completely transformed into long webbed feet like oars. The body is 6 meters long, twice as long as Korakshu. But the monster doesn't seem to be good at moving on land. After failing to hit it, it prepared to retreat to the water. Korakshu looked ferocious. As a famous cruel dragon in Game of Thrones, Korakshu would never let the monster go so easily. When the monster turned back, Korakshu rushed forward and bit the monster's tail. Korakshu tried to stop the monster from returning to the water, but the monster's power far exceeded Korakshu's. The monster flicked its tail violently, and Korakshu was thrown away. The moment it flew out, Korakshu made an instant judgment, and the blazing dragon flames spurted out, and the monster's back burned in an instant. Then the monster let out a shrill scream and plunged into the water. Korakshu seemed to realize that the monster was afraid of fire, and immediately sprayed a few more dragon flames toward the water, and then let out a provocative roar. After a few more minutes, there was no movement on the water. After seeing this, Korakshu left with satisfaction. No one saw the battle between the monsters, and Korakshu couldn't speak. Naturally, he couldn't tell Newgate and others what the monster looked like. The next day, the True Dragon Pyramid Hall. Dany held her chin up and pursed her lips as she looked at the 2 people below who were noisy. Barristan, you old immortal, why do you call me a vampire? There is no basis for what you say, old man. You only have 1 mouth left, as an old man. You say that I am greedy for money. If you have the ability to bring out the account books, we will confront you face to face. Jack looked aggrieved and angry, as if Barristan had really framed an upright official with clean sleeves. Barristan looked at Jack, who looked aggrieved and was so angry that his white beard trembled. Shameless, Jack Poseidon. You have absolutely no honor or responsibility of a nobleman. Jack was not only the Prime Minister of Meereen, but was also made Duke of Slavers Bay by Daenerys, who also granted him a large area of land around Meereen. However, most of the land around Meereen is salt land, and there is not much land that can be cultivated normally. When Jack was made a duke, he almost laughed out of emotion. If Jack were in Dany's position, he would definitely make himself an earl, leaving room for improvement. It turns out that Dany is a good person. In order to keep Jack to work for her, she directly awarded him the title of duke. Jack's expression didn't change when he heard this. Barristan, how dare you say that I have no honor and responsibility? You are the Kingsguard of the former Targaryen king. The king was killed by the Kingslayer, and you actually joined the Reaver and became his Kingsguard. The son of the one who lost the sword was driven out of the Kingsguard, and finally came to Meereen to beg for mercy. Bashful old thief, as a slave of the 3rd surname, you actually dare to bark in front of me. Since you didn't dare to be loyal to the late king, why should you linger on and become a dog with a broken spine at both ends of a rat? Barristan's face turned red. When it came to swearing, how could he compare to the knowledgeable Jack? That is to say, Jack does not have the blessing of a 4-wheeler now, otherwise he would definitely be scolded until he spits out blood. Seeing Barristan's face turning red, Jack Poseidon was unreasonable and took advantage of the victory, and pursued the victory. What did you accuse me of? Am I wrong? You, Barristan, are deprived of the king's salary. The late king made you a glorious kingsguard, gave you wealth, and gave you glory. And you. But after the death of the late king, you threw yourself into the service of the Septus. You are a knight in vain, and you are worse than a beast. The more Jack scolded, the more excited he became, and he continued to jump and scold. Two ministers and thieves do not want to conspire with each other. Although I, Jack, am just a lowly pirate. I also know that loyalty should come first, as a minister. My loyalty to your majesty can be seen from the sun and the moon. Unlike some people, who was born into a noble family from the Seven Kingdoms, but is a slave with 3 surnames, shameless. After Jack finished speaking, he waved his hand and turned away from looking at Barristan, as if looking at him one more time would stain his eyes. This turning move directly gave Jack a perfect spiritual victory. But for Barristan, it was simply the straw that broke the camel's back. Asshole, you have gone too far to deceive others. I want to apply for trial by combat, and let the 7 gods witness your lies. Barristan drew his sword directly, and was about to step forward to duel with Jack. That's enough, Dany stopped Barristan with a gloomy expression. Don't you two find it embarrassing? The Prime Minister has already said that the money saved will be used for food, and this matter should not be mentioned again in the future. Sir Barristan is not just a 3-surnamed house slave or a traitor. He is the bravest, most glorious, and most powerful knight in the 7 kingdoms. He has no choice but to join the Reaver. Besides, I don't want to hear anyone mocking Sir Barristan as a slave of the 3 surnames in the future. Otherwise, I will let Grey Worm cut out his tongue. The farce ended with Dany stopping it, and Barristan finally just glared at Jack angrily. He originally thought that if he accused Jack of corruption, even if there would be no substantive punishment for Jack, Dany would give him a verbal warning. As a result, Jack was not punished or criticized in the end, but instead made himself a mess. Fortunately, Her Majesty the Queen is sensible, and not only trusts him to explain to him, but also forbids others from laughing at him. In fact, Barristan is indeed one of the top knights in the 7 kingdoms, as Dany said. If he hadn't taken the initiative to accuse Jack of corruption in court, Jack would still admire him. Even if Daenerys is included, he has served 4 kings, and Jack will not call him a slave with 3 surnames. Dany glanced around and immediately met Jack's innocent eyes. Dany glared at Jack fiercely. Barristan is so old. If you make him angry, who will train knights to lead troops to fight for me? In fact, Jack can also help Dany train qualified soldiers and generals. Jack knows how to train discipline and remembers how to use the 36 stratagems. Although it is all on paper, as long as the soldiers are trained and they fight 2 more battles, they will definitely be familiar with the use of the 36 stratagems. However, Jack will not teach Daenerys these. The background of the Ice and Fire world is similar to the Middle Ages in Western Europe. The 2 sides usually rely on phalanxes and cavalry charges. The 2 sides confront each other on the battlefield, and then set up their formations and charge each other directly. The victory of the war depends entirely on the difference in numbers, equipment, and morale. When Robb Stark went south, he relied on feinting to the east and luring the snake out of the hole to directly annihilate 8,000 people of Ymane Lannister, and even captured Ymane alive. If Robb Stark had not broken off the engagement and killed his cronies, he would not necessarily lose the war even if he became king. Even if he could not make the North and the Riverlands independent, he could at least defend the Bay of Kaelin and make the North independent. But unfortunately, the 15-year-old young wolf lord was a genius in military affairs. But his political mind was inherited from his father. Moreover, Robb Stark was only 15 years old at the time, so it was understandable that he pursued a beautiful love. A week has passed. Even with Daenerys' warning, Barristan's titles such as 3-surnamed slave, white-haired old thief, and traitorous thief have still spread. After all, both of them are important ministers under the Queen, and it is natural that they can't hide such a big news as quarreling in court. But Jack is much smarter than Barristan, and he directly spent hundreds of silver coins to control the direction of public opinion. So now most people believe that it is the 3-surnamed slave Barristan who is jealous of Prime Minister Jack's talent. Then he shamelessly framed the Prime Minister for corruption, but was scolded by the Prime Minister on the spot. This made everyone understand Jack's methods again, which are really insidious. It is said that Sir Barristan has not shown up for several days. Everyone speculated whether he was scolded by Jack and fell ill and could only live in bed. When the direction of public opinion was controlled by Jack, Jack became idle again. The garden on the top of the Prime Minister's tower. Jack was lying in a rocking chair, surrounded by 4 maids. 2 of them massaged him, 1 peeled grapes for him, and 1 reached out to catch the grape seeds he spat out. "My lord, there is a letter for you." Evan came over and handed Jack a letter. Jack did not reach out to take it, but asked first, "Whose letter is it?" "I don't know. There is no signature, only an upright lizard pattern." Jack waved his hand to disperse the maids around him, and then took the envelope from Ivan's hand. Sure enough, there was a picture of Godzilla roaring to the sky on it, which was a message from Atlantis. The Atlantis Raven would first go to the Chamber of Commerce office at the Meereen dock, and then the dock people would put the message in the envelope, and finally send it to the Prime Minister's pyramid. Although there was an extra procedure, it also concealed Jack's relationship with Atlantis. Now the whole of Essos is in a state of watching the show. Except for Bravos, most city-states have cut off trade with Meereen. Unless Meereen can defeat the slave owners' coalition, the other waiting forces will not trade with Meereen. At this time, if they find out that the father of dragons is actually from Atlantis, then they will no longer honestly let Atlantis use products to reap their wealth. Instead, they will unite and form a coalition again, defeat Atlantis, take the product production technology for themselves, and then reap the wealth of the world. Jack will never underestimate the greed of these slave owners. After Ivan left, Jack lay on the chair and read the letter. There were 3 letters in the envelope. The first one was Newgate's brief description of the development of Atlantis. Jack nodded with satisfaction after reading it. Although Newgate's ability is not high, he is still safe and steady, and every step is according to his plan. When Jack saw the second letter, his face darkened. He didn't expect that the bastard Korsho would be arrogant again after being honest for a while. When he was with Jack before, Korakshu behaved very honestly, but dragons are dragons after all. As they get older, they will slowly regard all creatures other than riders as prey, including humans. And dragons are very intelligent, and will also have a rebellious period. Thinking of this, Jack decided to keep Korakshu with him at all times in the future. Otherwise, if he continues to be free-range like this, he will be wild enough, but he is afraid that he will grow completely crooked. And when Jack saw the third letter, his face couldn't help but become strange. Water monsters eat people? Jack's first reaction was to disbelieve it, but then he remembered that he was in the world of ice and fire. Whether it is the original novel, or the TV series, what is shown in it is just the tip of the iceberg. And the world of ice and fire is also a magical world after all. It is not impossible to think that there are some unknown fantasy creatures. After tearing up the letter and throwing it into the furnace inside the pyramid, Jack must go back to Atlantis. Since he had a plan, Jack didn't waste time and went straight to Daenerys, saying that he was going out for a while, and would be back in about 2 to 3 months. Dany was stunned when she heard this, and was immediately worried that Jack was going to run away, until Jack said that there were some problems with his dragon and he had to deal with it himself. Dany was relieved, and then slowly raised her legs, and her soft and white little feet rested on Jack's knees. Since it takes at least a month to go back, don't leave tonight, and leave tomorrow morning. After saying that, Dany blinked her big eyes, and her right hand kept playing with her long silver hair, looking forward to Jack's answer. Jack glanced at the pure little Dany, and then looked at the sky outside, and found that it was indeed late today, so he decided to set off early tomorrow morning. Then he smiled confidently and locked Jack's waist with her legs. But Jack slapped her hard on the butt. Dany groaned in pain, and immediately looked at Jack with tears in her eyes. At the same time, a bright red slap mark appeared. "I'll go arrange a speedboat first, and come back to deal with you later." After saying that, Jack left Dany's room, leaving Dany hugging the pillow and gently rubbing her pain. He may have retreated back to one of the crystal towers, or the vaults in the catacombs. I do not know, they were all afraid. The Septons, the Septas, the Sparrows, the Begging Brothers, even the Catakites. The next day, 301 AC, July 2. The news of Jack's departure from Meereen spread quickly. Even though Jack had arranged a development plan for the next few months, it still caused a lot of panic. Because Jack arranged many things himself, Jack actually left Meereen on the eve of the war. How could others not think too much? But soon the True Dragon Pyramid released the news that the Prime Minister was out to pick up his dragon, and would be back in 2 months. At that time, Meereen would be protected by 4 dragons. In this way, Dany released the news according to Jack's method, and as expected, the panic at the bottom of Meereen quickly subsided. But Dany also realized Jack's strong influence in Meereen. After thinking again and again, Dany decided to take advantage of Jack's absence to handle government affairs in person. At the same time, she was ready to come forward to comfort the workers in Meereen. This would not only improve her prestige in the management of Meereen, but also improve her status in the hearts of the free people. And Dany was also ready to bring dozens of pigs when she comforted those workers. This was a method she learned from Jack. Any condolences from the superiors, even if they only brought a little worthless benefit, would be grateful to the group of low-level free people. Thinking of this, he immediately asked his servants to buy 50 fat pigs. It only takes 3 to 4 silver coins to buy a fat pig, and the specific price depends on the weight of the pig. Even if calculated according to the highest price in the Meereen market, 50 fat pigs only cost 200 silver coins. The purchasing power of gold dragons is so terrifying that 50 fat pigs weighing 300 or 400 kilograms only cost 2 gold dragons. Therefore, Dany plans to visit once a week for 2 consecutive months. Similarly, Jack's departure also made the conservatives in Meereen active, thinking that their opportunity had come. The pyramid of the Zak family is the shortest among the pyramids in Meereen, only 40 to 50 meters high. But at this time, 6 great masters gathered in the pyramid. The 6 of them are representatives of the reactionary families in Meereen. That is, the conservatives who want to drive Daenerys out of the Slaver's Bay. Strangely enough, there are a total of 15 great master families in Meereen, and the strongest Daznok and Coral families are pro-dragon factions. The 7 neutral families, Glaza, Hazaka, Kanthak, Nachen, Par, Korza, and Reznak, are also middle-class nobles. On the contrary, the 6 reactionary families, except for the 2 families of Lorak and Merrick, who are the 6th and 7th, the remaining 4 families of Rihada, Urz, Yazan, and Zak directly took the last 4 places. In the American TV series, it was these small great masters who united to fund the assassination activities of the Sons of the Harpy. At the same time, it also made Daenerys fall into the Meereen knot, wasting several years trapped in the Slaver's Bay. And now, with the help of Jack, the Sons of the Harpy they funded did not cause a big disturbance. Even because of the report of a group of untouchables, a large number of Sons of the Harpy were caught before they took action. Loch Lorach sat in the main seat. Although he looked like a skinny old man, no one dared to look down on him. Locke scanned the crowd with his narrow and sinister eyes, and then said in an unusually hoarse voice, "Jack Poseidon, this little beast, has left me, Aaron. He is not cheating. Do you have any ideas?" When the news of Jack's departure came at first, they thought it was another conspiracy by Jack. Until now, they are sure that Jack has really left Meereen. Lord Zakwe suggested, since he has left Meereen, we may try to increase investment in the Sons of the Harpy. But he was immediately opposed. Even if the Sons of the Harpy increase investment, it will not have a significant effect. Jack Poseidon has left, but the joint household system has not left. Everyone talked about it, but no one could convince anyone. Only Loch Lorach looked at the arguing people coldly. Then Locke looked at his right hand, a young fat man who remained silent and smiled. The current head of the Merrick family, Hardin Merrick. The Merrick family is about the same strength as the Lorach family, and old Merrick and Locke are still good friends. At that time, the relationship between the 2 families was good. But since the death of old Merrick, his eldest son Hardin Merrick took over, and the relationship between the 2 families became subtle. Because Hardin is different from his stupid father, this little fat man is a pure smiling tiger, and even Locke can't guess what he is thinking. This group of reactionaries was led by Locke, who patted the table gently, and everyone immediately quieted down. It's not a good idea for everyone to keep arguing like this. Harding, what do you think? Harding glanced at Locke, still smiling, and said, "I have the least seniority, so naturally I respect the elders." Harding sneered in his heart. Locke, the cunning old man, was still staring at him. Back then, Harding's father was deceived by Locke into a stupid goose, and the strength of the entire Merrick family declined a lot. He once persuaded his father, but his father firmly believed that Locke was his good brother and would not cheat him. It was not until his father suddenly died of illness that he inherited the family business and became the great master of Merrick that the family's strength slowly recovered. And Harding was 100% sure that his brother Hada did the sudden death of his father, but he had always pretended not to know. Seeing that Harding was unwilling to say more, Locke stopped instigating Harding to come forward and directly expressed his opinion. Locke took out a letter. This is a letter from Kresnais, the great sage of Yunkai. Everyone took the letter and read it in turn. After reading it, everyone showed uncontrollable excitement on their faces. Great! Great! The coalition has confirmed that it will surround Slavers Bay in December this year, and that will be the date of Daenerys' death. Originally, the Anti-Dragon King coalition was ready to attack in September, but it took a lot of time for all forces to gather. According to estimates, the alliance will arrive at Slavers Bay in December at the earliest. Fortunately, there is no Four Seasons in the world of ice and fire, otherwise the slave owners will have to waste half a year. Locke smiled sinisterly and said, "In December this year, the alliance army will be divided into two groups. The navy, composed of 300 warships of Atlantis, will blockade the maritime trade of Meereen. And Christmas of Yunkai will lead the army and mercenaries composed of the city-states of the alliance to Meereen. We let the sons of the harpy, who are in action, deliberately reveal their flaws and be captured, and then keep our troops in place so that they think that the sons of the harpy have been eliminated. At the same time, we secretly recruit a large number of sons of the harpy. When the alliance army surrounds Meereen, we will directly attack, with the cooperation from inside and outside. Daenerys will definitely have no room to fight back." After listening to Locke's plan, everyone's eyes lit up. This plan is good. First, let the Mother of Dragons relax her vigilance, and then take action at the critical moment to catch her off guard. Everyone admired Locke very much, and at the same time they were more wary of Locke, who was really too insidious. Suddenly, Locke seemed to remember something. "Harding, I heard from the servants that you bought a lot of salt land under governance outside Meereen." Everyone looked at Harding. The salt land was Daenerys' project, and they all knew it. Wouldn't buying the salt lands mean bowing to Daenerys? Even the Marek family has defected to Daenerys. Yes, it is said that the salt land has been restored to a certain extent after being infiltrated by the canal. It is said that the first batch of salt land infiltrated by the river water has begun to grow crops. Harding's expression remained unchanged, and he admitted openly. At the same time, he was very surprised. How did Locke know that he had acquired a part of the salt land? There is a mole under him. Harding immediately thought of the greatest possibility, otherwise Locke would not have received the news even a week after he bought it. "Harding, don't you know that salt land management is a project that Daenerys Targaryen is working on? What's the difference between doing this and taking refuge in Daenerys Targaryen?" Locke looked distressed, as if he had been betrayed. Harding smiled softly and said unhurriedly,
"I just bought some land to grow olives. I bought the land and it is mine. I am not farming for Daenerys."
"If this counts as taking refuge in Daenerys, then Locke, you know that the Great Wave Chamber of Commerce has a sworn relationship with Jack Poseidon. But you still want to join the various stores under the Julang Chamber of Commerce. Are you considered joining Jack Poseidon?" Locke's expression changed when he heard this. He originally wanted to find something for Hardin Merrick, but he didn't expect that the other party actually knew that he wanted to join the Julang Chamber of Commerce. Hardin bought the land to plant olive trees because his family's business depends entirely on the slave trade. Once the slave trade is hit, the family will suffer too many uncertainties, and the industry is too single and has no risk resistance. For example, now that Daenerys Targaryen has liberated the slaves, the Merrick family has directly lost its source of income and can only live on its old capital. The other 5 families are in the same situation, and the only pillar of the family industry is the slave trade. It is precisely because of this that they will become reactionaries in Meereen, constantly trying to drive Daenerys out of the slave bay and restore slavery. As for the pro-dragon faction and the neutral faction, although they also rely on the slave trade to make money, they do not rely solely on the slave trade. They also sell olive oil and Giscari wine, etc. So even if there is no slave trade, they can still make money now. Especially the Daznek and Karel families, their manors in the Kaiser Mountains still have a large number of olive trees planted, and the original wall building and clearing of the fields did not affect them. And they also took the initiative to restore the slaves in the manor to free people. In addition to the necessary food, only 1 copper coin is needed every day to make the liberated slaves continue to work for them like slaves. In this way, with only a few insignificant copper coins, Daenerys has no reason to attack the manor in the mountains. To be honest, they also regretted not opening up a manor in the Cather Mountains. No one expected that Daenerys would suddenly appear to liberate the slaves. In their eyes, Daenerys is a psychopath. At the beginning, Depton's ancestor Valyria was also a slave. And they just wanted to guard the foundation passed down by their ancestors, but inexplicably became evil and damned people. Similarly, Locke wanted to join the giant wave merchants, and he also discovered the problems of the family industry like Harding. But the two did not expect that they had undercovers planted by the other party under their hands. Then Locke laughed. "Nephew Harding is right. We should not doubt you just based on this." Uncle was careless. Harding laughed, but did not speak. Now the nephew and uncle started to get closer. Why didn't they do this just now? The other 4 nobles did not find anything wrong at all. They just thought it was a simple misunderstanding. These 4 people are very consistent with the image of stupid and ignorant nobles. It can be said that they have nothing but money, including brains. Then the meeting of the 2 foxes and 4 idiots ended. Meereen on the surface looks calm, but the dark has been turbulent.
What?
A month passed in a flash. To be precise, it should be 28 days. Jack took a clipper and returned to the Sea King Island in just 28 days. At this time, Pier 1 of the Sea King city was full of people. They were all curious about what the Sea King, who was only known by name, looked like. Soon the hull docked, and Jack walked off the boat in a square step. The square step is steady and can make the superior look more majestic, especially the leader walking in the square step, which will give people a sense of security and reliability. It's a pity that Jack doesn't have a beard, which makes him look less mature. But Jack's young and handsome appearance also makes people feel emotional. Is that the Sea King? He looks so young. I heard from Lord Newgate that His Majesty the Sea King seems to be only 16 years old. How can he not be young? Great, His Majesty the Sea King is back, and the evil dragon can no longer be rampant. Brother, what happened to you? You actually said that the guardian of the Sea King Island, Korakshu, is an evil dragon. Humph, the evil dragon ate the cow I bought. What do you think? Didn't Lord Newgate compensate you? Yes, 3 times the compensation, so I decided to take my newly bought cow and try my luck again. Amid the discussion of the crowd, Jack simply waved and said hello a few times and then quickly went to the Sea King Palace by the Taming Lake. The planned Sea King City covers an area of 5,000 square kilometers, and the construction will start from the Sea King Palace in the center. However, the Sea King Palace at this time is only a prototype. It can't even be called a prototype, but fortunately there are already habitable rooms inside. The total area of the Septas Islands is more than 20,000 square kilometers, of which Sea King Island occupies half, 11,000 square kilometers. Reference Tianjin. 60% of the trees on the island have been cut down. Jack plans to leave 10% to make the island look a little green, and the rest will be cut down. Your Majesty, you are finally back, and I am worried to death. Newgate hurried out. What happened on the island during this period of time made Newgate worried to death. Whether it was the mischievous Korakshu or the mysterious water monster that has been causing panic recently, it gave him a headache. Jack frowned and said seriously, Newgate? Newgate was frightened by Jack's serious expression. He thought Jack was blaming himself for his poor performance. Is your hair getting thinner again? It is often said that living with a king is like living with a tiger. At this time, Newgate finally understood the meaning of this sentence. Jack smiled and patted Newgate's arm, then walked towards the Sea King's palace. After Jack left, Vitelli greeted Newgate and said, Grandpa Newgate, long time no see. Your white beard has grown longer, don't you trim it? Newgate looked at Vitelli kindly. Little girl, I haven't seen you for a long time. You have grown up so fast. The relationship between Newgate and Vitelli is like that of a grandfather and grandson. At the beginning, Newgate took good care of Vitelli. At this time, the sleeping Korax suddenly felt a chill. He suddenly got up and looked back, and saw a young man holding a wooden ruler, looking at him gloomily. Korax turned his head and prepared to continue sleeping. When he got up suddenly, his old father, who was far away, appeared. But unfortunately, Jack really came back, and then there was a commotion. When Newgate and Vitali arrived, Jack was already sitting on the throne, with Corax crawling under his feet. Jack was looking through the government affairs on the desk, when he beat Corax just now. Corax got under the table. Just when he was about to flip the table, he accidentally found the memorial on the table. The above is a work report made by a man named Hakimi. What surprised Jack was that this man actually managed a logging team of 3,000 people. The most important thing is that this man is a senior slave, who was a teacher. Newgate, this Hakimi manages 3,000 people. Can he manage it as a teacher? Your Majesty, of course he can manage it, and the arrangement is in an orderly manner. These teachers and butlers are all good managers, much better than me. Jack was secretly shocked. He suddenly found that butlers and teachers, these senior slaves, are similar to the bachelors of Westeros. Especially butlers, many noble families are similar to a small kingdom, and each senior butler is equivalent to a king's hand. Even stronger than the king's hand after all, the king's hand in Westeros is not selected based on the level of internal affairs ability. Now there are a total of 1,000 citizens who were born as butlers and teachers on the Sea King Island, plus the Chamber of Commerce buys some from outside from time to time, a total of 1,100 people. Even if we throw out 400 teachers, the remaining people seem to be enough to support Atlantis, to establish a centralized society. Jack carefully read the work reports submitted by the stewards appointed by Newgate, and found that these stewards were more useful than the scholar officials of the Celestial Empire. Even the high-level slaves who were teachers had governance skills that were better than the stewards after they adapted to the work content. These teachers who were high-level slaves were essentially the same as the scholars in Westeros. Reading and literacy were only the most basic. Astronomy, geography, history, politics, and even swordsmanship were all covered by this group of teachers. In this regard, the university scholar and the group of teachers under Jack were undoubtedly ahead of the scholar officials of the Celestial Empire, and governing the country was naturally a piece of cake. In this case, Jack had to choose between the feudal system and the centralized feudal system. It was impossible to directly cross over to the modern or even modern system, because productivity and people's wisdom could not keep up. The first is the feudal system, which established the country by enfeoffing the princes. But as time goes by, the royal family will have no land to enfeoff. And if you don't pay attention, it will be easy for the local princes to become bigger and stronger, resulting in the failure of the imperial power and the chaos among the princes. The centralized feudal system also has its shortcomings, the biggest of which is land annexation and incompetent rulers. In ancient China, the lifespan of a unified dynasty would not exceed 300 years. In the late dynasty, the powerful would use various means to seize the most important means of production in ancient times, land. And with the change of climate, once the cold climate period comes, there will be a large number of landless refugees. Under this circumstance, unless a revival leader appears, even a wise king cannot save the feudal dynasty. After thinking this through, Jack also had a determination in his heart. Since any system has shortcomings, he might as well learn from the county system of the first emperor and strengthen centralization. At least Jack has the confidence to control a centralized feudal dynasty. As for how his own descendants will govern and develop Atlantis in the future, it is not something he, a founding emperor, can control. I just hope that by then, the founding Emperor Jack Poseidon, recorded in the history books of Atlantis, will be a wise ruler and an emperor for all ages. In modern times, archaeologists and historians praise his glorious deeds every day. This made Jack satisfied. Jack suddenly felt that his mind was clear. This problem that had troubled him since the establishment of Atlantis finally got what he thought was the most perfect solution. Newgate! Jack suddenly roared, scaring the two people and the dragon next to him. Especially the Korakshu under Jack's feet. It widened its eyes, which were not big to begin with, as if saying, "Psycho, why are you roaring so loudly?" Although Newgate was startled, he quickly reacted and said, "Your Majesty, I'm here. Give orders to have a big banquet tonight. I'll treat you, take out all the stored meat and wine, and invite every Atlantean to have a good meal. By the way, don't take out the Poseidon brew, that thing is too expensive." Newgate. Although he didn't know what Jack was crazy about, Newgate still went to arrange the banquet. Atlantis now has 31,000 people, and the cost of the banquet is not low. Soon the news that His Majesty the Sea King held a banquet in the Sea King Palace spread throughout the island, and countless people cheered. You should know that when the Sea King Palace was built, Newgate prohibited anyone except craftsmen from approaching. Everyone couldn't help but sigh that His Majesty the Sea King's generosity was really not comparable to Newgate, a stingy man. Ashley was one of the carnival crowd. Sea King Island does not restrict itself from doing business. Riding the rapid development of Sea King Island, she directly opened a tailor shop. As her skills in making clothes became more and more advanced, her business naturally became more and more prosperous. Ashley got off the bed and started looking for clothes. She looked at her husband, who was still not satisfied, and urged him, "Mark, get up and get dressed quickly. We will go to the Sea King's palace to attend a Sea King's banquet later. Why are you in such a hurry? The banquet will start at 7 o'clock. It's only 4 o'clock now. There are still 3 hours. Atlantis has a detailed 24-hour time division. Jack divided it by referring to the time measurement methods of the Ice and Fire world and his previous life. During the long summer, it was dawn at 4 or 5 in the morning and dark at 8 in the evening. It may not be as accurate as Jack's previous life, but as long as the time is unified, it is accurate, and it can provide convenience for daily life and work. Ashley rolled her eyes. Haha, you are so tired in just 10 minutes. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You still want to give birth to 10 children? Woods! Mark jumped up from the bed immediately. Who do you say can't do it? Mark went up and picked up Ashley, and then threw her directly on the bed. Hey, what are you doing? Let me show you if I can do it. 20 minutes later, Ashley put on the dress she made with a rosy face. Mark put on his clothes slowly and leisurely, looking quite handsome, but a little depressed. Let's go. Let's take some front seats first. It is said that the seats for this banquet are first come, first served. After saying that, she pulled Mark into the carriage, which was bought with her first pot of gold. In the Sea King City, as long as you have money, you can get what you want at the dock market, such as a carriage. It's just that you need to register to buy a carriage, and then you have to pay an extra 20 copper coins for the monthly property cleaning fee. Otherwise, you have to find someone to follow the carriage and shovel the feces all the way. All the roads on Neptune Island are paved with cement, flat and wide. Mark drove the carriage to the Neptune Palace. When he was about to reach the Neptune Palace, he was surrounded by endless wheat fields. The Neptune City occupies half of Neptune Island in the design, and the Neptune Palace is located in the center of Neptune City, next to the number 1 grain production base. The Noban grain production base is Newgate's consideration that if Neptune City is surrounded by enemy forces in the future, it can still rely on these 490,000 acres of fertile land to maintain consumption. The remaining other grain bases will be built outside Neptune City. The entire Neptune Island covers an area of 11,000 square kilometers, and Neptune City covers an area of 5,000 square kilometers. The remaining 6,000 square kilometers, of which 4,000 square kilometers will create 6 million acres of fertile land for growing food. The remaining 2,000 square kilometers will be turned into a 3 million mu pasture for breeding. Everyone on the Sea King Island knows about these plans, because 30% of the planned fertile land and pasture will be sold to individuals. Mark borrowed a 30-year loan from the Imperial Bank and bought 300 mus of fertile land and 200 mus of pasture. Mark is also one of the few people who borrowed money to buy land, and more people are still waiting and watching. After all, they are still not very confident about government loans, and always feel that there is a place for cheating people. When Ashley and Mark arrived at the Poseidon Palace, not many people came. They came very early. At this time, rows of tables extended outward from the Poseidon Palace directly surrounding the entire Poseidon Palace. The surroundings were densely packed with tables and chairs. Ashley pulled Mark into the hall, which was already full of people, and only the outermost circle of the hall had empty seats. Ashley and Mark quickly grabbed 2 seats. At this time, Jack was sitting in a seat in the center of the hall, describing the blueprint for the future to the people below. Population is our most important thing, and one day, Atlanteans will be standing in every corner of the world. So starting from tomorrow, I will set up a civil marriage office, and every couple getting married must go to the marriage office to register. Only then is it considered a legal marriage, and we present a marriage certificate. When you have children in the future, you can take your marriage certificate to the Ministry of Civil Security to register the child's information and receive childbirth subsidies. Jack was chatting in his seat, drawing pie after pie. The audience below was already full, before the food was served. Everyone stared at the young king on the throne with bright eyes. The beautiful life they had never imagined was constantly clear in the mouth of the young king. Time passed slowly as Jack boasted, and soon one exquisite dish was served. Dishes include large pot stir-fries, fried sea fish, barbecue, and sausages. Staple foods include bread, fried dough sticks, flatbreads, steamed buns, pancakes, and various kinds of steamed buns and hot pies. Atlantis followed Newgate and the other first batch of Jack's followers in eating, and Newgate and the others also became accustomed to following Jack's eating habits. Maybe the nobles are not used to Chinese delicacies, but for slaves, Chinese delicacies are no worse than the bread, milk, and barbecue that the nobles eat. Even after they got used to eating it, the white bread that used to make them greedy to death didn't taste good. Jack raised his glass, stood up and said loudly, "Dear noble people of Atlantis, we will make the Atlantans the most noble nation in the world. Cheers to the future. Cheers." The banquet officially began, and the content of people's chats was, not surprisingly, the grand plan that Jack had drawn before the banquet started. The noble Atlanteans became their mantra after this banquet. Jack looked at this scene with a smile. At this moment, everyone would have a sense of belonging and national self-confidence. And then, after the birth of his first child, a destiny-destined royal family and a powerful empire of feudal monarchy will become complete. Because when the ocean heart was transplanted, the system stated that it would change Jack's genes. In other words, Jack's child will also inherit the ability of the heart of the ocean, which will be an absolute symbol of the Ocean Emperor's lineage. After 7 days, Jack will hold a sacrifice, and the target of the sacrifice is Poseidon. When the time comes, he will explain his ability to breathe underwater as a blessing from Poseidon, and then let Poseidon show up and kill the so-called water monster. In this way, Jack has secured his position as Poseidon. Never underestimate the help that myths and legends bring to the throne. Sometimes they are even more useful than an army of 100,000 people. Especially in a fantasy world like Game of Thrones, Poseidon may have been worshipped too much, and he may actually become a god. The banquet lasted until 11 o'clock. This banquet cost 12,000 gold dragons, but the effect was also very obvious. The next day, when Jack was about to go to Newgate, Newgate came to the door first with the successor he had trained. "Your Majesty, I have something I want to discuss with you." Jack looked at the hesitant Newgate and chuckled. "Is there anything else that Newgate doesn't dare to say?" "Your Majesty, let me tell you the truth. The soap factory, fine salt factory, and brewery on Crescent Island are now basically completed." "Well, so what? Do you want me to work in a soap factory?" "Your Majesty, don't be joking. What I mean is that Atlantis now has a stable income. There is no need for you to go back to Meereen." Jack raised his eyebrows. Newgate had always given him advice before, but he had never advised him not to do anything. "Why don't you go back?" Jack looked at the young man next to Newgate. "Tell me, is this your idea?" The young man didn't panic at all. He took a step forward and bowed to salute. "Your Majesty, my name is Asadolf. I used to be a slave butler. Fortunately, Prime Minister Newgate appreciated me and became the Prime Minister's attendant." Jack nodded expressionlessly. "Tell me why you advised me to stay on Neptune Island. If you can't tell me why, I'll let Corexo eat your head." Asadolf's heart tightened. Even though Newgate told him that His Majesty the Poseidon actually had a good personality, he still became a little nervous when faced with Jack's threat and aura. But after all, he was the successor selected by Newgate. Asadolf quickly adjusted his mentality and said, "Your Majesty, now that the factory on Crescent Island is basically completed, Atlantis finances will also have stable income in the future, so the money you embezzled from Meereen is no longer dispensable. Secondly, you have helped Daenerys Targaryen gain a foothold in Meereen. Next, Meereen will become the center of war. You are not safe there. You might as well stay on Neptune Island to take charge of the overall situation. The war wealth is the best money to be made. Finally, I heard that the Mother of Dragons is the most beautiful woman in the world, and I hope you can focus on the development of Atlantis." After Asadolf finished the last point, he quietly swallowed his saliva. In the last sentence, he was reminding Jack not to be blinded by beauty, but this sentence is very likely to make Jack chop off his head, because he heard from the giant wave chamber of commerce that the relationship between His Majesty the Sea King and Daenerys Targaryen was unusual. However, Asadov's expected anger did not appear. Jack's reaction caught him off guard. He just looked at him quietly, without saying a word. After more than 10 seconds of silence, a layer of cold sweat oozed out of Asadov's back, and the torment continued to erode his originally calm heart. He was an ambitious man. After learning about Jack's character from Newgate, he wanted to express himself through the above words. But if he didn't grasp the strength well, he would most likely play himself to death. But Jack just looked at him quietly without any expression, so he had no idea what Jack was thinking at this time. Newgate was also a little panicked. After all, he was the one who brought Asadorf here. If he made Jack angry, he would inevitably be implicated. Just when the atmosphere was getting more and more depressing, Jack suddenly laughed. Jack stood up and patted Asadov on the shoulder. "Asadov, good. The Prime Minister is old, you have to work hard." Asadov was not excited when he heard this. After Jack's silence, Jack's words made him a little scared, and he didn't know what Jack was thinking.
Come here so early.
"Have you two eaten?" Jack suddenly asked. "Your Majesty, we really haven't eaten," Newgate said directly. "In that case, sit down and eat together. Come on, prepare 2 more breakfasts. By the way, Asadov, do you like white bread or steamed buns and fried dough sticks?" Asadov's eyes jumped, and he said without hesitation, "Of course I like steamed buns and fried dough sticks. These delicacies you created are delicious." This sentence was a little bit against his will, but it was only a little against his will. As a high-ranking slave, Asadov had good food under the slave owner, including wheat bread, milk, eggs, sausages, etc. So unlike ordinary slaves, he used to eat the same food as livestock, and could adapt directly to fried dough sticks and steamed buns. Although the taste of steamed buns and fried dough sticks was okay, he preferred to eat a piece of bread and drink a cup of warm milk in the morning. But he certainly couldn't tell the truth at this time. In his opinion, Jack was not as friendly as Newgate said, but a moody young king. Newgate sat in front of Jack, while Asadov was a little nervous. Soon the maids brought up the 2 prepared breakfasts. When Asadov saw the breakfast placed in front of him by the maid, his face suddenly changed and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. "It's bad. There are bad people among the crowd." Jack smiled and said, "What's wrong? Don't you like it? I remember you had a piece of bread and a cup of warm milk every morning." Although Jack was not in the Sea King Island was his carefully built base, so he naturally couldn't really leave it alone. At that time, Jack bribed some people in the first group to be spies, and this group of people has now become regular spies of Seagull. "Don't stand there. Eat quickly." Newgate also found something wrong, and immediately reminded Asadov. Jack picked up a small soup dumpling and stuffed it into his mouth, saying vaguely, Eating is the happiest thing. After eating, all worries are gone." Asadov was relieved when he heard this. What Jack meant by this sentence was that after this meal, I can let go of your lies. Asadov ate the bread in big mouthfuls, and then drank the milk in one breath. "Don't say it." This feeling of surviving a disaster made the bread and milk sweeter. Newgate and Jack were eating and talking. As the person who had followed Jack the longest, he had completely adapted to Jack's eating habits. But after he became the Prime Minister, he asked Rutger to search the world, but he didn't find the snack called instant noodles. Asadov is right, and his analysis of the situation is also very accurate, so I have decided not to return to Meereen. Newgate was relieved when he heard Jack's decision, but he still said, "I heard from the merchant's fleet that you told Queen Daenerys that you would return in 2 months. Is this okay?" Newgate was worried that Jack would offend Daenerys and create an enemy out of thin air. Jack said you thought too much when he heard this. "Daenerys and I are not really superiors and subordinates. To put it bluntly, I am her advisor, helping her gain a foothold in Slaver's Bay. Once she has gained a foothold, she will be involved in a long war with the slave owners, at least until her dragon grows up. So even if I don't go back, she won't turn against us, and she will even get close to us. After all, with my relationship with her, Meereen and Atlantis are potential allies. And we can take advantage of this time to develop steadily, and we can also reduce the strength of both the free trade cities and Meereen. and make money by selling grain and wine. Jack expressed his thoughts. Originally, she was going to use the beauty trick to take in Dany, her dragons, and the Unsullied. But later he found that even if Dany was beaten to the point of rolling her eyes by him, she would not give up her army and dragons. Her obsession with the Iron Throne has penetrated her blood, so Jack can either become a husband or a lover. Therefore his promise to Dany is dispensable in his eyes. Of course Jack still has to write a letter and make an excuse. If he didn't say anything and didn't go back, then, with Daenerys's love brain, Jack was really worried that she would ride a dragon to burn him in the future. After hearing Jack's words, Newgate was relieved. After all, it is better to have one more friend than one more enemy, and an enemy with a dragon. The two ate and talked. Now the army of Atlantis only has about 7,000 Unsullied, and the official navy has recruited 3,000 people. A total of 10,000 people. Jack plans to train the Unsullied into the navy and replace them with new equipment. Of course, this takes time, and Jack is not in a hurry. Now Atlantis has only more than 30,000 people, and it is impossible to support a standing army of 10,000 people. He still needs these people to open up wasteland and farm. The Unsullied are simply invincible when used to cut trees and plow fields. They are very efficient and not lazy at all. In addition, there are large ships sent to Bravos for renovation. The renovation will be completed in 2 months. At that time Atlantis will have a real navy. As the two talked, Asetov next to them was amazed. He thought that Atlantis's finances had hit the bottom, but he didn't expect that there were still 3 million gold dragons. Jack even had 500,000 gold dragons in Meereen that he hadn't taken back, but he would bring the money back when the Chamber of Commerce went to Meereen next month. After Jack finished his meal, Newgate also finished his meal and asked the servants to clean up the tableware. Jack followed Newgate to the place where the sea monster ate people. This was what Jack originally called Newgate for, but Newgate brought Asetov with him, so Jack temporarily put it aside. Soon Jack and his 5 companions came to the place where the sea monster ate people, and Vitalia, the little secretary, also followed. As a capable secretary, Vitalia must always protect Jack closely. In addition to Vitil, there is also Go. This guy has been gaining strength rapidly in recent months. Newgate bought many top gladiators for him as sparring partners, and these gladiators all became Kingsguards. Newgate formed a 9-man Kingsguard around Gos. According to Newgate, the Iron Throne has 7 Kingsguards, so our Sea King must have 9. And in the myth of the creation of the Sea God, compiled by Jack, 9 is the extreme number, and Newgate himself is particularly obsessed with the number 9. Newgate took Jack to the place where the 2 workers were swallowed. There was nothing to see here, and Newgate didn't know what it meant to protect the scene. Moreover, a month had passed, and it was useless to protect the scene. Jack squatted down, picked up a handful of soil, and smelled it, then frowned and looked at the surface of Tieinian Lake. Seeing Jack like this, Vitelli asked curiously, "Did you see anything?" Jack shook his head. "Of course not. A month has passed. What can I see?" "Then why do you smell the mud and look at the lake with a serious face?" Jack said, as a matter of course, "Because it looks more professional." Vitelli, Asadolf, Newgate, Choden. Perhaps he finally felt a little embarrassed. Jack changed the subject. "Has anyone seen the sea monster?" "Yes. Since the 2 people were dragged into the water, there have been a steady stream of witnesses, but they all describe it differently. But the size of the monster they described is not much different, about 6 meters. As he said this, Newgate also gestured. Atlantis used the measurement units specified by Jack. Standardization and unification of units is one of the necessary conditions for the birth of an industrial base. 6 meters? Jack was a little surprised. He originally thought it was some relatively large and ferocious fish. But after thinking about it carefully, it was not big enough to drag 2 adult boys down. "Do you still have the legend of the sea god's creation of the world that I gave you before?" "Yes, I have kept it well." Jack nodded and ordered, "Gather everyone tonight, and then arrange someone to tell them the story of the sea god's creation of the world. On August 9, we will hold the first sacrificial ceremony." Newgate said cautiously, "Your Majesty, is it really useful to sacrifice to the sea god? What if the sea monster still eats people after the sacrifice to the sea god? Wouldn't it damage your prestige?" Jack patted Newgate on the shoulder. Do you remember the giant beast that created the world in the myth of the sea god's creation of the world? Newgate nodded. Of course he remembered that the sea god Godzilla created the world in the creation of the world. After Godzilla cut the sky and the earth with the sea blue sea god's holy light, he held the sky on his back and stepped on the earth. It was with the growth of Godzilla that the distance between heaven and earth became so far away. This is the story of the creation of the world in mythology. At that time, Newgate was deeply attracted by the story. He read it more than 10 times, and still felt unsatisfied. He would turn it over once a day. What Newgate didn't know was that he was actually addicted to novels. The myth of the sea god creating the world was adapted by Jack based on the novels of the prehistoric times in his previous life. Not to mention Newgate, even Jack was deeply attracted by the novels of the prehistoric times, especially the magnificent scenes written by authors with good writing skills, which especially attracted Jack. Just know it. We will hold a sacrifice at the mouth of the galaxy. The river and the sea will be clearly separated at the confluence. The sea god Godzilla will appear and help us eliminate the water monster.
They were all afraid. The Septons, the Sparrows, the Begging Brothers, even the Colin Knights.
Newgate was a little unconvinced, but when he thought of the legend of the creation of the world written by Jack, and Jack himself was full of legendary colors, Newgate suddenly felt that it was not impossible. But since His Majesty said so, it would be wrong for him to doubt it again. That afternoon, Newgate gathered everyone together to tell the story of the sea god creating the world. The content of the story is not complicated. It is said that 30 million years ago, the world had no light, no life, and no distinction between land and sea. The whole world was a chaos and nothingness. After an unknown amount of time, a soul flower bloomed in the chaos bell, and inside the flower was bred the world's first god, Godzilla the sea god. Godzilla was born with supreme power, and then Godzilla the sea god used the holy light of the sea god to cut through the chaos. And just like that, the world had the first ray of light. After Godzilla cut through the chaos, the upper half of the world turned into the sky, and the lower half turned into the earth. But the good times didn't last long. Godzilla the sea god found that the sky and the earth were slowly getting closer. So Godzilla the sea god used his shoulders to support the sky and stepped on the earth, and abruptly stopped the sky and the earth from fitting together. As time passed, Godzilla grew up day by day, and the distance between heaven and earth became farther and farther. Finally, 10 million years ago, with the fall of Godzilla, the sea god, the sky and the earth were no longer close, and became what they are now. The fallen body of Godzilla, the sea god, turned into all things in the world. His breath turned into wind and clouds. His voice turned into thunder. His left eye turned into the sun. His right eye turned into the moon. His limbs turned into 4 directions: east, west, south, north. His body turned into mountains. His blood turned into rivers, lakes, and seas. His hair turned into plants. The most special thing is that the sea god divided his soul into 3 parts, which turned into 3 things. These 3 things are the continuation of the sea god, an egg that breeds the new Godzilla, which is said to be hidden in the deepest part of the ocean. When the red comet reappears, the new Godzilla will reappear in the world and protect the Atlantis clan. The heart of the ocean, a heart formed by the flesh and blood of the sea god's soul and the heart of the sea god. Those who have this heart will grow gills behind their ears, can breathe in water, and can summon the sea god Godzilla through sacrificial ceremonies. Dragon eggs, the great creation of the soul of the sea god, are said to be obtained by the first lizard in the world. But the lizard was eaten by the first bat in the world before it could merge. Finally, the bat merged this part of the soul and evolved into the Sky Overlord, the real dragon today. After the sea god Godzilla transformed into all things, the whole world ushered in a carnival. This stage was called the biological explosion period, and various monsters, dinosaurs, were born. These monsters were huge and powerful, and they dominated the world at that time. As countless years passed, the world's resources became less and less, and at this time war broke out. The most powerful dragon clan took the lead in launching a war of genocide against other races, and other races were not to be outdone, and united against the most powerful real dragon clan. It is unknown which side won this war, but since then the real dragons, including those monsters, have all disappeared. In the millions of years that followed, a new creature appeared. They were the earliest humans, also known as Atlanteans, and called themselves the sons of the sea god. Since then, humans have gradually stepped onto the world stage. After the monsters disappeared, no other creatures could rival humans. The powerful Atlanteans built the first city in human history on a huge island. Since then, the world has been ruled by the Atlanteans for 3 million years. Later, the increasingly powerful Atlanteans began to no longer respect the sea god. They pushed down the statue of the sea god and demolished the temple of the sea god. Therefore, the will left by the sea god became furious and launched a tsunami covering the world. After seeing the horror of the sea god, the Atlanteans created the world's largest ship, Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is tens of thousands of meters long. It saved 100,000 Atlantean women and children when the tsunami hit. When the tsunami dissipated, these 100,000 people hid their identities and completely disappeared in the long river of history. After the disappearance of the Atlanteans, countless races were born in the world. They fought and conquered each other at the same time. After a long war of annexation, the Geese conquered every corner of the known world and became the overlord of the new era. Until 5,000 years ago, the Valyrians found the gift of the sea god at the 14 volcanoes, dragon eggs. The real dragons were not extinct. They kept the fire in that genocide. Until the arrival of the Valyrians, they hatched the dragon eggs. But the dragon eggs had been sleeping for too long, and the hatched dragons were no longer as powerful and wise as their ancestors. They were no longer real dragons, but giant dragons. The Valyrians tamed them, and still called them real dragons, because even if they were not as powerful as their ancestors, they were still the most powerful creatures in the world. The Valyrians relied on the dragons to defeat the Gess Empire, and establish a more powerful empire, the Valyrian Free Fortress. Although Valyria conquered Gess by force, it was because of the powerful fighting power of the dragons, so Gess conquered Valyrian civilization and culture. Valyria continued the slave city-state system of Gess, so the Andals fled to Westeros, and the Moonsinger led a group of people to establish Braavos. Then came the well-known Doomsday Catastrophe. Valyrian civilization collapsed overnight. Aegon Targaryen the Strayed conquered Westeros and became the king of the Seven Kingdoms. The Valyrian colonies in Essos became independent and became the free trade city-states of today. The Dothraki began to emerge. Later, the Targaryen dynasty was overthrown. Now, only Daenerys Targaryen is left alive. Of course, there are some Blackfire bloodlines with impure blood. There are many details in the myth of the sea god, opening the sky so that people arranged by Newgate told it for 5 hours. When everyone heard the end of the myth, they all showed disappointed expressions. The story was too exciting and ended too quickly. Everyone was discussing the myth of the sea god opening the sky. Just when everyone was talking to each other, Newgate suddenly released news that shocked everyone. First, the myth is not false. Second, the new sea god Godzilla has been born, just under the Seta's shells. Third, the heart of the ocean has merged with His Majesty the Sea Emperor, who is the last pure-blooded Atlantean in the world. 6 days later, on August 9, His Majesty the Sea Emperor will hold a sacrificial ceremony at the mouth of the galaxy. And on that day, he will use the seawater that has merged with his blood to transform everyone into Atlanteans. At the same time, as the legend says, through the sacrifice, he will summon the sea god Godzilla to destroy the water monster in the Sky Eye Lake. Everyone digested Newgate's words in a daze. What does it mean? After listening to the myth, I really want to become a noble Atlantean, right? August 9, 301 AC. The day that everyone had been looking forward to finally arrived. Everyone finished breakfast early and walked to the estuary of the galaxy. Today they did not have to work, but went to the estuary to participate in the first sacrifice. They also wanted to know what changes would happen to them after the Sea King converted them into Atlanteans. Of course, what they were looking forward to more was not the conversion of blood, but whether the mythical sea god Godzilla would appear. The galaxy runs through the entire Sea King Island, and the estuary in the southeast is the location of this sacrifice. In the past few days, Jack arranged thousands of people to quickly build a temple of the sea god. Because of the tight time, the temple looks relatively simple. But it doesn't matter. The water is no longer deep, and the dragon is spiritual. When Godzilla appears, people will automatically ignore the simple temple. The time of the sacrifice was set at 10 o'clock in the morning, and Jack came to the temple of the sea god early to prepare. Jack attached great importance to this sacrifice, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a good opportunity to deify Jack himself. Jack is going to rebuild the foundation of modern science and speed up the pace of industrialization, so it is inevitable to enlighten the people. But enlightenment is not so friendly to feudal society, and ancient society is unequal. Once people can read and write, they will unconsciously pursue equality and shout the slogan, "Are kings, princes, generals, and ministers of different species." Especially after eating and drinking, humans always like to make trouble for themselves. So Jack is going to simplify the pyramid from monarch, ministers, and people to monarch, officials, and people, so as to achieve disguised equality to ease the social contradictions after the enlightenment of people's wisdom. Simply put, under the monarchy, officials and people are equal before the law. The monarchy makes laws and implements laws, but does not act within the rules of the law. To realize this idea, Jack's own monarchy must be deified. Let the monarchy and theocracy be integrated. The king is the incarnation of God, and is not bound by secular laws. In the ancient centralized feudal society, monarchs often used the means of fooling the people to make them superstitious, believing that the monarch and his descendants are the natural rulers of the country. But how to make the people superstitious often uses three methods: deification of race, mystification of person, and sanctification of personality. However, Jack is not sure whether this method is effective. But with Godzilla and Korakshu, even if the tree grows crooked, Jack has the ability to repair it. What's more, Atlantis is an empire built from scratch. There is still a big difference between the 7 kingdoms of Westeros and the free trade city-states of Essos. Korakshu made a dragon roar, and then slowly landed beside Jack. At this time, Jack was directing the servants to put the 3 major animals of pigs, cattle, and sheep in place, and then personally put the 3 minor animals of chickens, ducks, and fish on the plates. "Are the mountain fruit plates and noodle fruit plates ready?" Jack asked. "Everything is ready, Your Majesty. 4 plates of different fruits and 4 plates of different pastries." Korakshu stared at the 3 large animals placed in front of him, and it was obvious that he was greedy again. Jack patted Korakshu's head gently. "Let's go back and have barbecue. Don't try to eat it secretly, otherwise I will let Poseidon peel your skin." Korakshu shook his head and retracted his gaze, but he was not afraid of Poseidon. After all, he had not seen Poseidon yet. He just listened to Jack's words. Time passed slowly. At 8 o'clock, everyone arrived under Newgate's arrangement. They stood quietly in the open space in front of the Temple of Poseidon. In the last hour, Jack asked everyone below to give a small bowl with half a bowl of water in it. Everyone looked at the blood water in the bowl, curiously. There was red sand-like things in the water. This thing is of course not Jack's blood, but the dragon dung of Korakshu. When the dragon dung first comes out, it is soft, but as time goes by, it will become as hard as metal. When the dragon dung is ground into powder and put into water, it will form this kind of red, quicksand-like blood water. This thing is not the point. After all, the Atlanteans in ancient times made it up, so it doesn't matter whether the blood water has any effect. After 10 o'clock, the sacrifice officially began. Jack appeared in a blue royal robe embroidered with Godzilla. This is a little different from the traditional golden royal robe, but it is very consistent with the culture of Atlantis. There will be no awkward feeling after getting used to it. Jack first read out the prepared sacrificial words, and he used Chinese. Jack had no other ideas, but simply needed a language that others could not understand, but could make others feel powerful. Then 3 incense sticks were lit in the altar. According to Jack's request, everyone drank the blood water and knelt down to worship. Although the people behind didn't know what was happening, they felt inexplicably solemn and knelt down one after another. Jack, who was at the front, didn't kneel down, but bowed. In mythology, the heart of the ocean and the newly born Godzilla were of the same level. Then, at Jack's request, everyone kowtowed 3 times and bowed 9 times, and then Jack took off his blue imperial robe and came to the altar. The altar was built close to the shore, 9 meters high and 3 meters wide. With a total of 33 steps, there was a half-man-high incense burner on the altar, and the sea was below the altar. Jack jumped into the sea. Newgate stepped forward and shouted loudly, "The Emperor is above, shining on the earth. The spirit of the sea god, all living things. Everyone has his place, no matter now or in the past. Peace, Dad. Newgate read it once in Valyrian, and then in the common language to make sure everyone could understand it. After reading it, Newgate said to everyone, His Majesty the Sea King has contacted the sea god in the deep sea through sacrifice and the heart of the ocean. It won't be long before everyone can see the sea god. Newgate was very guilty when he said this. He knew that Jack could breathe underwater. But what about Godzilla? It can't be that His Majesty himself is wearing a leather suit and doing something tricky, right? Newgate glanced at Korakshu, who was looking east and west, and thought that His Majesty could let Korakshu pretend to be Godzilla from a distance. At least he had a tail, and he couldn't be distinguished from a distance. Time passed slowly, and soon half an hour passed. Small-scale commotion and discussion began to appear in the crowd. Many people began to worry. Did His Majesty pretend too much? Did he really think that he had a mythical item like the heart of the ocean and drowned in the sea? They sincerely acknowledged Jack's rule and believed that Jack was a perfect and beloved king. But they really didn't believe that Jack could breathe in the water and summon the mythical giant Godzilla. That's right, this is what most people think about this sacrifice. They don't believe that Jack can breathe underwater and summon Godzilla. In their opinion, although the story of the sea god opening the sky is wonderful, it is just a myth after all. Whether it is the children of the forest, the ancestors, the Andals, or the Geeths, they all have their own myths and legends. For example, the harpy believed by the Guest people, no one has ever seen a living harpy. Just as Newgate was thinking about it, Koraku suddenly roared, and then flew into the air very anxiously, and kept roaring. Everyone was frightened by Koraku's sudden irritability. They didn't know if it was their illusion, but they actually heard fear from Koraku's roar.
Hurrah!
The dull roar came, and the sense of ancient times came to the face, making people feel fear. Hiss! Koraku screamed in fear, and it felt deadly danger and fear for the first time. Poseidon, Your Majesty is drifting on the sea. Newgate stared blankly at the sea in the distance. Jack was standing on the sea. His legs were not moving, but he rushed to the shore at an astonishing speed. The people in front of the Temple of Poseidon were stunned. They didn't expect Jack to appear in this way. Is the legend true? This is what everyone thought, and Newgate was no exception. He thought of all the possible scenes of Jack, but he didn't expect it to be like this. In just a dozen seconds, Jack approached the coastline, and then Jack sank into the water. Poseidon, under Jack's feet, swam quickly towards the coastline. When approaching the coast, Poseidon switched his posture from swimming to walking. With a click, Newgate knelt on the ground, not because of faith, but because of fear. Poseidon, what did he see? A monster of more than 10 meters walked out of the sea step by step. Oh no, it's not a monster. It's the mythical sea god. The giant beast that opened the sky, Godzilla. Lizard-like appearance, ferocious dorsal fin, thick and long tail. These features all indicate the identity of a giant beast. Of course, although Poseidon grows very fast, it is impossible for him to be more than 10 meters tall. The current Poseidon is only 7 meters tall when standing upright. In Newgate's eyes, he is more than 10 meters tall, purely because Newgate himself was scared silly. It's just a psychological effect. Angle it! Poseidon roared again, and then the azure atomic breath rushed into the sky. The blue light column from the sky lasted for 3 seconds, and everyone was scared to crawl on the ground. If they were still worried about whether Jack was drowned just now they have no ability to think at all. They only have one thought in their hearts at this time. That is, the myth is true. After listening to the legend of the sea god opening the sky, they never dreamed that they would see the sea god in the myth one day. Poseidon slowly walked to the offerings placed under the altar, swept all the offerings with big mouthfuls, and turned and dived into the galaxy. However, after Poseidon left, Jack came out of the sea after several minutes. At this time, everyone was still kneeling on the ground in fear, and Jack was watching this scene with some astonishment. It seemed that the shock brought to them by today's play was far beyond their imagination. But think about it, if Pangu really appeared in front of him one day, he might be shocked and at a loss. Get up, no need to kneel. The sea god has accepted our sacrifice and will help us kill the sea monster. The sacrifice is officially over. In order to celebrate the completion of the sacrifice ceremony, everyone will not have to work in the next 7 days, but the salary will be paid as usual. The imagined cheers did not come, and everyone helped each other to get up, obviously not recovered from the shock just now. At this time, Koriku flew down from the sky and rushed to Jack's side, constantly sniffing, as if wondering why his father was riding a sea monster. Jack patted Koriku's head, comforted Koriku's mood, and asked Newgate to bring his trident of the Sea King. The trident was made of ordinary iron. Jack was going to smelt a Valyrian steel sword, but time was very urgent, and it had not been forged yet. After taking the trident, Jack told Newgate to do the follow-up work, and then he jumped into the galaxy. Seeing this, Newgate immediately calmed down and began to evacuate everyone. Those with weak legs were helped by those with strong legs to leave first. Anyway, they could not stay in front of the Poseidon temple. After Jack jumped into the water, Poseidon immediately came up and licked Jack's cheek fiercely. Poseidon was very excited. He hadn't seen Jack for a long time, so he naturally missed him very much. Jack also stroked Poseidon's big head twice, then grabbed Poseidon's dorsal fin and controlled it to swim towards the Skyall Lake. There were no natural tributaries in the galaxy, so Jack didn't worry about getting lost. He just walked along the direction of the water flow. Poseidon was very fast, and it didn't take long to reach the Skyall Lake. The vision on both sides suddenly widened. The Milky Way was like a rope, and the Skyall Lake was a knot in the middle of the rope. The widest part was 2 or 3 kilometers. Jack didn't know how deep it was inside. Poseidon took Jack to dive continuously, and Jack held the trident tightly in his hand. He didn't know what the sea monster looked like, but the sea monster definitely had no natural enemies in the Skyall Lake. As long as Poseidon restrained his breath, Jack on its back would be the best bait. After diving about 30 meters, he reached the bottom of the lake. The water of the Skyall Lake was very clear, and a large number of fish swam around at the bottom of the water. But soon, Jack found something wrong. There was no big fish among these fish. They were all small fish of 20 to 30 centimeters, which was very abnormal for the huge Milky Way. It seems that all the big fish were eaten by that monster. What on earth is it? Could it be a group? Jack was a little curious. If there was only one monster, it would have to be very gluttonous to eat all the big fish in the Milky Way. Just as Jack was thinking, Poseidon suddenly turned around and saw a ferocious monster rushing towards Jack. Poseidon roared and rushed forward. The momentum of the Titan beast was released and the speed of the monster's sprint slowed down. But the monster had no time to think because Godzilla had already rushed over. Godzilla was 12 meters long, including its tail, and it looked much bigger than the monster in the water. Jack carefully looked at the water monster beaten by Godzilla. Its strange appearance made Jack seem to see a living fossil in evolution. Because the monster's front and rear limbs were too obvious, just like a creature that lived on land and had not yet evolved after living in the water. Jack guessed that this creature should have been a reptile living on the island before, but had to enter the water to survive for various reasons. So the monster's limbs evolved from claws to the shape of paddles. Otherwise the forelimbs would not be like duck feet, and the hind limbs would not be like the limbs of a turtle. Just when Jack was stunned, the monster suddenly exerted force and broke free from Poseidon's entanglement at the cost of having its hind limbs torn off. But the monster did not run away, but rushed directly towards Jack. This scene made Jack raise his eyebrows. Good guy. He is not low in intelligence, and he knew to attack him. Jack was not afraid at all. He set up the trident and rushed towards the monster. The water is not only the home court of fish, but also his home court. Seeing that Jack did not run away, the monster's eyes showed humanized surprise, and his speed increased by 1 point. When the distance between the two sides was less than 3 meters, Jack threw the trident with great force, but the monster opened its mouth and stabbed Jack with its tongue like a sharp sword. The trident hit the monster's shoulder, and the monster's tongue also pierced Jack's shoulder. The monster screamed violently and suddenly retracted its tongue. A hole with a diameter of about 5 centimeters was pierced on Jack's shoulder, and the blood instantly dyed the lake around Jack red. The monster was about to pull the trident off his shoulder with his mouth, but Jack suddenly rushed in front of him, and the wound on his shoulder had already recovered. The monster widened his eyes, and for a moment he didn't know who was the water monster. At this time, Poseidon also rushed over, grabbing the monster's back with 2 short hands. The mucus on the monster's body did not play any role, and Poseidon's claws pierced the monster's flesh fiercely. Without giving the monster a chance to continue struggling, the dorsal fin behind Poseidon lit up blue light, and a breath of atomic breath melted the monster's head. Jack used a harpoon. No, it should be said that he used a trident to carry the monster's body to the shore. The Tenian Lake in the center of the galaxy has a good geographical location, so 2 docks were built. After dragging the monster's body ashore, Jack pulled out the trident, and at this time Newgate and others also rowed over. Hiss! Korakshu roared excitedly. Korakshu, this dragon is very vengeful. He was almost dragged into the water by this monster at the beginning. How can he not be excited now that his revenge has been taken? Jack reached out and grabbed a handful of mucus on the monster's body. The reason why he used the trident to drag the monster ashore just now was because of this mucus. The mucus on the monster's body is very silky, like lubricating oil. Jack has asked Poseidon to search underwater for monsters to lay eggs or cubs, either to kill them all or to see if they are worth raising. Just when Newgate was about to touch the mucus, Korakshu directly sprayed dragon flames, trying to eat the monster. The moment the dragon flame touched the monster, it was like igniting fuel, and a huge wave of fire rose instantly. The sudden huge wave of fire scared everyone, and the fool Korakshu was also scared. When he first ignited the monster escaped into the water, and he didn't expect the monster to be so flammable. Looking at the burning body of the monster, Jack was a little stunned. No, what creature can be so flammable? Seeing this, Newgate hurriedly called for people to put out the fire. The fire was a bit big, and the monster's 6-meter-long body was all burned, like a 6-meter-wide and 5-meter-high wall of fire. Wait, don't put out the fire first. See how long it can burn. Jack stopped the person who was about to put out the fire. Fortunately, the Sea King Palace also implemented a palace ban. Otherwise, such a huge wall of fire would definitely attract a large group of spectators. However, the monster burned for much longer than Jack imagined. After an hour, the monster was still burning. Jack's expression changed from surprise to awakening, and then from awakening to astonishment, and finally only numbness remained, staring blankly at the burning of the monster's body. Another hour passed, and the burning of the monster's body still did not stop. At this time, Poseidon's roar came from the side of the dock. The moment he heard the sound, Newgate and others knelt down again. Jack didn't say much when he saw this. He could understand Poseidon's roar. He found the offspring of the monster, but there was a little accident. After Jack came to the side of the dock, he saw a layer of dense tadpoles swimming around Poseidon, each of which was about 5 centimeters. It turned out that just now, Poseidon found the monster's nest. After entering it, the dense eggs just broke the shell, and countless monster cubs instinctively regarded Poseidon as a mother beast. Jack looked at this layer of black tadpoles in surprise, at least thousands of them. Jack picked up a monster cub and looked at it carefully, and found that there was differentiation among these monster cubs. A few of them have completely turned into aquatic creatures, with no webbed feet on their forelimbs, and turned into paddle-shaped creatures like their hind limbs. But most of them still inherited the characteristics of their mother, with webbed feet on their forelimbs. Perhaps if Jack hadn't interfered, those few monsters with paddle-shaped limbs would continue to survive, and they would become smaller and smaller due to food shortages. The remaining majority would be eliminated because they were too slow. In the end, only the monsters with paddle-shaped limbs survived, and completely lost the characteristics of amphibians and reptiles, and turned into complete aquatic creatures. Jack didn't expect that the history of biological evolution that could only be seen in books would appear in front of him alive. But Jack asked Poseidon to take care of the children first, and he planned to dig a large reservoir to raise this kind of monster. As we all know, the essence of industrial base is to boil water, and boiling water requires fuel. Look at the corpse still burning with a raging fire behind him. Isn't this a living coal mine? Maybe this thing is not important now. But what if the long night comes? The long night of the world of ice and fire will plunge the whole world into darkness for several years. In such a dark situation, how can this burning water monster still be a monster? It is simply Jack's little sweetheart. A sweetheart. Godzilla was a little resistant. Taking care of a baby is the most annoying thing. But Jack deceived him. Poseidon, you are the last Godzilla in the world. You have to take on the responsibility of continuing the race. Sooner or later, you will have to take care of a baby. Practice first. Anyway, it's not your baby, it doesn't matter if it dies. The original Godzilla is only 110 meters, but Poseidon is a Godzilla modified by the system to adapt to the high magic plane, and some genetic modifications have been performed. Poseidon is 200 meters tall when he grows up. As a titan beast, his lifespan is about 10,000 years. And it only takes him 20 years to become an adult. He is male before adulthood, and becomes female after adulthood. After adulthood, Poseidon can decide whether to start reproducing. During the period from childhood to adulthood, the hermaphrodite will nurture an embryo in its body. If there is no desire to give birth, Poseidon will suppress the development of the embryo, leaving it unchanged for hundreds of years. But if she wants to give birth, she will stimulate the embryo and give it enough nutrition, which generally requires a gestation period of 90 years. There will be 1-2 Godzilla babies born in one litter, but there is only one chance to give birth in a lifetime. Because after giving birth, Godzilla will become a female completely and will lose the ability to give birth from then on. It is precisely because of this that Jack does not have high requirements for Korakshu, as long as he is obedient. It is like Jack gave birth to a pair of children. The eldest daughter is obedient and good at studying. She has a long life, and can protect the family for a long time. The second son does not matter, as long as he does not commit crimes. Jack picked up Poseidon's big head and kissed him hard. Dad loves you the most, good boy. Be obedient, okay? Poseidon's tail swung happily, indicating that this matter was left to him. Then Poseidon dived into the bottom of the lake and began to hunt. He had to prepare the first lunch for these little guys. Jack licked his lips. Poseidon stayed in the sea for a long time, and his skin tasted salty. After Poseidon left, Jack returned to the monster mother. Newgate arranged for someone to watch it. I want to know the exact burning time. Also, mobilize people immediately to build another reservoir along Tianyan Lake. Remember to build a dam with cement to raise this monster. It will be called Oilfish in the future. Oilfish? Why is it called oilfish? I remember you said in Minecraft that oil is a very precious resource. Newgate was a little curious. Why is this strange monster called oilfish? Why not called burning fish or barbecue fish? Because its strategic value is the same as oil. Winter is coming, Newgate. Newgate was stunned by these words, but he quickly came to his senses. Winter is coming, Your Majesty. If we really succeed in raising them, the darkness of winter will be driven away by you. Newgate looked at Jack with admiration. He had not thought of this just now. This long summer has lasted so long, so what awaits the world will be a long night that will last at least an entire generation. Even if the temperature in Essos is a little higher, it is still relative to Westeros. Every time there is a long night, the world's population will be reduced by half, but this time I am afraid it will be good if 1/3 can survive. Especially slaves. Every long night will take away 90% of the slaves. They are like livestock. After death, the slave owners will mix them into feed to feed some omnivorous animals. Thinking of this, Newgate felt compassion again, but he was no longer a slave. He was the Prime Minister of Atlantis, and he had to consider the people of Atlantis first. However, he was still prepared to do some things within his ability, such as arranging for the Chamber of Commerce to increase the progress of purchasing slaves. Now that Atlantis is short of labor, he still has some power. In Atlantis, as long as you work, you will get paid, and you even have the opportunity to take paid breaks. Newgate did not believe that Atlantis would freeze to death or starve to death after the long night. I was just about to go shopping for $0 next, and all the merchant ships purchased with $0 were put into slave transportation. Now relying on the transportation model proposed by Jack, it can attract 5,000 people every 2 months. After the $0 purchase, the efficiency will at least double. Thinking of this, Newgate said to Jack, Your Majesty, there is something I want to tell you. Huh? You're hesitant. If you have anything to say, just tell me. As for the population, I think 100,000 people is a bit small. Can we absorb more? Newgate spoke his mind. Jack smiled slightly. Why, the slave who is about to die in the long night arouses your sympathy. Newgate's lips wriggled a few times, as if he wanted to find some excuse, but gave up for some reason and finally chose silence. That seems to be it, Your Majesty. Newgate didn't know how to speak. But Jack chuckled and said, I am not a benevolent king. Everything I do is for myself. But I have a benevolent prime minister, and the slaves should be thankful that they have won your sympathy. We should also be thankful that there is an old man among them who really thinks about them. Jack looked at Newgate and said softly, From now on, Atlantis will no longer limit the number of people it can absorb until the long night arrives. Newgate was greatly surprised, and immediately knelt down in front of Jack. Your Majesty, they should be most fortunate to have met you before the long night. Jack waved his hand and signaled Newgate to quickly arrange for people to build the reservoir. Looking at Newgate's excited departure, Jack felt a little emotional. What he had to admit was that there was always a group of kind-hearted people in the world, and they were the real Madonnas, not Madonna bitches. Just like Newgate, even more than 50 years of slavery could not erase the integrity and kindness in his heart. With his power as Prime Minister, he could increase the planned population limit even without reporting to Jack, because Jack's order at the time was estimate 100,000 people, and decide based on the situation. But Newgate still chose to report to him. Excessive integrity and kindness, but a little less smooth than when we first met him. And he looks a bit like Ed Stark. This is not a good thing. If he meets Joffrey, the Eternal Emperor, he will probably not be able to survive for a month, and his head will be stuck on a spear in public. In contrast, Jack seems a bit bad. Everything he does is to build a powerful empire and then enjoy the pleasure of power. However, Jack has no regrets, let alone self-blame. People are different. He likes his current life and the pleasure that power brings. Tolekiu, let's go. I'll take you back to have a barbecue. August 16, 3001 AC. Only then did Daenerys, who was far away in Meereen, receive the letter from Jack. The letter stated that Jack was worried because of the water monster that appeared on the island. Kolek was also attacked by the water monster and was seriously injured, so Jack could not come back. Dany was a little worried after reading the letter and immediately wrote a letter asking Jack if he needed help. She could let the strongest dragon have a try. After writing the letter, he handed it to the maid beside him and asked her to release the letter crow immediately. After the maid left, Dany suddenly felt nauseous and dry. Upon seeing this, Missandei immediately handed over the warm milk, and Dany took several sips before she recovered. Your Majesty, are you okay? How about we find a doctor to come and take a look at you? Since yesterday, Dany has felt nauseous and dry from time to time, but it is not frequent and there is no obvious discomfort, so Dany does not care. Dany waved her hand lightly. No, maybe I ate something the day before yesterday, and my stomach feels uncomfortable. It will be fine in 2 days. Missandei was still a little worried. After all, Dany had never had a stomachache before, and she didn't eat anything strange the day before yesterday. How could she have an upset stomach? But Dany said it was okay, and Missandei said nothing more. The maid whom Dany had just arranged to let the raven go came to the corner of the pyramid, and then secretly opened the envelope. She was surprised when she saw the content above, but she quickly put the note back and walked towards the raven cage as if nothing had happened. However, her behavior was seen by another maid. The maid who saw all this slowly left, as if she had never appeared. As expected, the news that Prime Minister Jack Poseidon could not come back because of the serious injury of the young dragon was known to everyone that night. However, thanks to Dany's recent strong presence, there was no unrest in Meereen after she personally spoke to comfort. The silver moon was high in the sky, and the garden at the top of the pyramid. Dany stroked Drogon's head while looking down at the whole Meereen. It seems that Meereen is not inseparable from Jack, and it's the same with me. Dany's purple eyes were as beautiful as purple gems under the moonlight. The feeling of missing made Dany feel more melancholy, just like an ordinary girl missing her lover. I'm not used to Jack being around. I miss him a little bit. What should I do? Dany muttered to herself. Drogon felt that her mother was unhappy and licked Dany's delicate cheeks gently with her tongue. Dany smiled after feeling the comfort from Drogon and gently pushed Drogon away. Little Drogon, your tongue has barbs. It hurts a little. Feeling that her mother's mood had returned to good, Drogon also rubbed Dany gently. Not far away, Viserion and Rhaegal looked at the big brother who was close to Dany, curiously. They couldn't figure out why the big brother suddenly became so close to their mother. He even stayed with their mother most of the time and didn't compete with them for food. They couldn't figure it out, so they gave up thinking directly. Anyway, it had nothing to do with them. Drogon didn't compete with them for food, and they were so happy. Ventrue also received the news from his servants. Not only was he not sad about this matter, but he was happier than anyone else. As for Jack's dragon being injured or something, he didn't believe a word of it. He dared to risk his life to guarantee that Jack was definitely preparing to develop his own power for some reason. Humph. The excuse is quite similar. A sea monster attacked a giant dragon and the dragon was seriously injured. Hearing his father's cold snort, Ivan asked with some confusion, "Father, do you think this news is false? Will Jack Poseidon come back?" "No. Jack Poseidon is not coming back. That's true." "What do you mean?" "Dragon. His dragon is the same as Her Majesty the Queen's dragon. They are super weapons. It will be able to sweep everything in less than 10 years. And he only has one dragon. Do you think he will let his dragon take risks?" Mantuo smiled confidently, "Unless he has a more powerful weapon than the dragon, but that is impossible, so his dragon must not be injured, but he just doesn't want to come back." Yewin's eyes lit up, and he said with some excitement, "Then the Julang merchants he protected before are now at their disposal. The Poseidon brewing of the Julang Chamber of Commerce is very profitable, and hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants are equally as profitable as the arena. Now that the Meereen arena wants to open for business, it must have Dandy's participation as a shareholder, and she can guide the internal operations. After the Julang Merchant Guild opened a store in Meereen, thanks to the low price of materials and novel taste, countless nobles wanted to get involved. So they opened their own shops one after another. After all, hot pot and barbecue have little value. As a result, the place had just been renovated and operated for one day, when it was immediately closed down by Jack's people for various reasons. Since then, they have guided the Julang Chamber of Commerce to have the largest protective umbrella in Meereen. The most disgusting thing is that the newly renovated house here was sold to someone from the franchise Chamber of Commerce. Not only do you have to pay a franchise fee to join the Julang Chamber of Commerce, but you also have to maintain the store operations yourself, and you also have to hand over 30% of your profits to the Julang Chamber of Commerce every month. But even so, they still chose to join the Chamber of Commerce, because after joining the Chamber of Commerce, they can get a purchase quota for Poseidon brew from the Chamber of Commerce every month. There are various styles of Poseidon wine, including red grape, green grape, wheat, and various degrees of alcohol. The wines are all very clear. Under the operation of the Chamber of Commerce, Poseidon brewing has become the standard product of Meereen nobles, a symbol of status and a synonym for nobility. Therefore, after many people join the Chamber of Commerce, hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants are operated by Buddhists. After all, both restaurants make money from middle and lower class people. In 1 month, the profit is not as much as the profit they make from selling a bottle of Poseidon brew. After they joined the Chamber of Commerce, the price of Poseidon brew was 300 gold dragons, and they were sold to Yunkai, Astapor, or other free trade city-states, at several times the price. This excellent quality wine has spread in Essos in just a few months. Many businessmen or nobles know about this wine, and its popularity is getting more and more popular. However, the quantity of Poseidon brew is too small, and many people have only heard of it but never seen the actual product. A bottle of wine can even be sold for thousands of gold dragons outside. The value of Poseidon wine worth thousands of gold dragons is no longer the value of the wine itself. What Jinlong bought was not Poseidon wine, but vanity and a sense of superiority. Looking at his son's expression, Mantuo asked, without changing his face, "What do you think?" Ivan said excitedly, "That must force them to sell it to us at a lower price, or even buy their secret recipe directly at a low price. The cost of producing it ourselves will definitely be lower. And their brewery is in Meereen. I heard that their brewery will be demolished soon. I think you can take people to seize their brewery, just like Jack Poseidon sequestered other people's breweries. Same as the store." Mantuo took a deep breath after listening to his son's words. His son was somewhat smart, but he was just a little smart and didn't have any long-term vision. "Do you think we can take control of the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce now that Jack is gone? Do you think there are any secrets left by the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce in the brewery in Meereen?" "Isn't it?" Ivan asked, doubtfully. Half a month ago, the supply of Poseidon brew from the Julang Chamber of Commerce suddenly stopped. They said it would take 3 months to resume supply. The reason given was insufficient raw materials. Ivan was not stupid enough and said uncertainly, "You mean that brewery was ready to be demolished before Jack left, and now Poseidon Brewing is stopped supply because they have already demolished it?" Montu nodded and continued, I suspect that Jack is the Julang Chamber of Commerce, the master behind the mysterious Atlantis. Just wait and see, someone will definitely be unlucky next, and we are prepared to add fuel to the fire and add insult to injury. The Julang Chamber of Commerce is stationed. Dono and Marty are sorting out the lists on hand, and some of them have expressed their intention to withdraw from the Chamber of Commerce. Following the method given by Jack, they successfully promoted Poseidon Brew into a popular luxury product. But the development of things obviously exceeded their expectations. A bottle of 500 ml Poseidon Brew could be sold for a high price of 300 gold dragons. It was like a dream. Everyone is still rushing to buy it, and 1,000 bottles of Poseidon Brew every month are snatched away at the beginning of the month. How on earth did His Majesty come up with such a method? It's so far-sighted. Dono changed his words in time. He originally wanted to say something sinister and vicious, but this was not something he wanted to say. When they first joined, Jack proposed to sign a contract. The contract was very thick, and many nobles did not read the fine print carefully. The contract stipulates that anyone who joins and breaches the contract before the deadline must pay a penalty of 100,000 gold dragons. If there is not so much money, real estate can be used to repay debts. And when Jack left, he explained that the brewery on Crescent Island has been almost built. Let them immediately dismantle the brewery here, smash all the distilling machines, and throw them into the sea. It is precisely because of this that the supply of Poseidon Brew will continue to be cut, for at least 3 or 4 months. Originally, Dono thought that the supply would be restored after a period of time, and it would be sold as usual. But just a few days ago, Marty suddenly received a Raven message from Poseidon Island. The main content is to let them pay attention to the changes that will happen next, and someone will definitely be interested in the brewery. Those messy members in the Chamber of Commerce will definitely unite to make Poseidon Brew lower the price, and then directly take out the contract to bite hard. Marty chuckled. These people don't know the relationship between His Majesty the Sea King and the Chamber of Commerce. They think they can negotiate with us after His Majesty the Sea King leaves. How naive. After they resell the sea god wine, the price is several times higher. Why are they still thinking of suppressing our price? I don't understand.